All right, everybody, what is going on? What is going on? Hello, hello, hello. No, I'm not late. I'm very on time, actually. What is going on? Hello, hello. How do we feel about this chapter? For those of you who were part of Monday's stream, you understand why we had to bump the stream topic back a little bit, right? Stream topic on Monday was debating who the final villain is going to be, Emu or Blackbeard. But I think I think it was important to get this chapter out because spoilers were dropping as early as Monday, little hints. So I think with this chapter out, we can approach this discussion in a more comprehensive manner. Tiptio, thanks for the 5. Emu feels like a protagonist. He's risking his life. He thinks fate has him like rocks. He's making the save like Goku. This strengthens the Blackbeard final villain agenda. I am still riding out Blackbeard final villain. I still think it's going to be Blackbeard final villain. I think that's what we're headed towards. But I think Oda's definitely going to... I think Oda's definitely going to pull out all the stops with Emu. Like, I don't think it's going to be just one or the other. Really feels like... I think, obviously, the one has to be the last villain and the most important villain of the story. I do think that Blackbeard will take that spot, but I would not be surprised if Emu feels, at the end of the day, like neck and neck just as important as Blackbeard. Cadmos Monkey, thanks for the 2. It's too early for Blackbeard to kill Emu in the Elbaf arc, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's happening. Ison says, Morge punctual and I'm late. It's so over for me. Duck20, thanks for the 5. Arrogance, idleness, negligence, pride were all traits Emu had when he was on Elbaf. Do you think Usopp's speech had Emu have a change of heart? No. I think something very... I don't think Emu would have changed a single thing based on Usopp. I mean, Usopp, he called out things that we, the reader, were seeing, but the simple reality is Emu basically saw the two characters face to face that he wanted to kill above all else, Nika and Nidhogg, and was just like, I gotta do this now. You can't let these two, he saw right there that the potential threat from these characters is just too high. I also think it says a lot that we've had 20 years of the Great Pirate Era, and really longer than that, like the 40 years since Rox's era in God Valley, and Emu has not once been like, I need to get off my ass and do something, right? He's been fine. He's just like, we'll ride it out. Doesn't really matter. He showed up at God Valley, but in the half-assed way, right? He showed up in his Spectre form or whatever, and was just like, he didn't view anybody there as anything special. He just turned rocks. Dami reversied him, and he's like, all right, wash my hands of this, I'm done. But with Nika and Nidhogg, he's just like, okay, now we're drawing a line here. I got to deal with this myself. King GG, thanks for the 2. Zoro, Emu, Ashura clash incoming. I'd say Emu's one of the few characters where I don't know if even Ashura is going to do anything. Monkey with Stick, thanks for the 2. Emu is black. We have to accept that Zoro killing Emu has a greater than 0% chance. Yeah. Also, let's get the stream likes up to 100 real quick. Let's get the stream likes up to 100. Frederick Leo, thanks for the 5. Overlooked reveal this chapter. I suspect Ragnar froze whatever's in Emu's room with the big straw hat and can unfreeze it as well. That's a really good point. I've seen people talking about the Punk Hazard angle, but that is definitely the hat is definitely another angle that's very interesting. The hat, there's a ton of potential with the hat for sure. I wonder... No, I don't want to get too speculative right now. But no, I mean, this is the place to do it. But I don't want to jump into hat theories at the moment. We'll leave that for the moment. Cadmus Monkey, thanks for the 5. What's your top 5 designs, and does Emu make it? I'm going to wait till next chapter to to gauge how I feel about Emu's design, because we really, like, his entrance is awesome. Like, his entrance is like 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10. Like, one of the best entrances Oda's ever done. I think Emu himself, I need a closer up shot of him to understand, to gauge his design. I mean, we have the close up of the face, but it's not a full shot. And then we have a shot of his full body, but it's a little bit of a distance. So I think next chapter is when we'll get a real look at his design. Fading Face, thanks for the 2. Crew dying because Usopp wanted to rage bait the devil. Again, I really don't think Usopp factors into it, as funny as that is. I think Usopp is... I really don't think Usopp had any influence over Emu coming here or not. I think it's purely Nika and Nidhogg. Wait up, thanks for a lot. Rock's strongest pirate had Big Mom, Whitebeard, Kaido, Roger, and Garp, and tried to duck Emu. Usopp, comically weak pirate, had a half-dead Brook and said, "Run the fade." I'm excited because I think Usopp's not done for the arc. I think we're still going to get to see some good stuff out of Usopp from here on. How do y'all feel about Emu's design? How are you guys feeling about the design? About the design, the entrance, all of that. Emu had to pull up personally, Usopp upskill. Wait, Loki went out to sea, but Emu didn't know about Nidhogg. Did Loki just not use the fruit? No, there was, he commented about, we have new intel on the Fog's ship captain. Oh, no, wait. No, the Emu talked last chapter about, like, a monster in the mist, or it was talked about last chapter about a monster in the mist. Okay, hold on. Let's, okay. Yee, thanks for the 5. Zoro seems to be the first line of defense against Emu. Could Emu potentially reference Ryuma, or even call Zoro the one-eyed swordsman Ryuma? I'm gonna be honest. The fact that I think that would be amazing for Zoro fans to see, but I think the fact that we get, Emu's basically his rundown of all the characters that he views as significant over the years. We just got his rundown right there. And Ryuma's not involved. I think this is bad news for Ryuma. Bad news for, like, Kaido, Big Mom. Arguably bad news for Dragon, but I think Dragon, he's still got time to get his in, I think if Emu had thoughts on the one-eyed swordsman, it would have shown up this chapter, right? He kind of gave a shout-out to everybody who's on his shit list, But I think it'd be cool. Ryuma ultimately was a Wano character more than anything else, right? So I don't know if Ryuma would have even wandered outside the country to do that much. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to be in the cards. Sanji aura farming on killing him, mad disrespectful. Yeah, that was really, really funny. That was really funny. Mr. Saturn Lo-Fi, thanks for the 5. Love the Gear 5 parallels with the music and covering their face during the reveal. Think we can expect other similarities, Luffy bringing things to life. I don't want Luffy to bring things to life personally. This felt very Big Mom-esque and Emu-esque. But yeah, the Gear 5 parallels with the music are perfect, I feel like Emu's fruit and the Nika fruit are obviously direct parallels. Again, I still believe that Emu is the Sea Devil, and I think that this chapter is like halfway towards confirmation of that, because Emu's ability is clearly some sort of devil-based devil fruit. The Sea Devil would really hammer that in. I mean, all of his contracts are based on sea contracts, shallow sea, deep sea, etc. I think Sea Devil is where we're probably headed, personally. But, yeah, so direct parallel between Sun God, Sea Devil. I think that makes a ton of sense. And then you just got Loki as this random, like, well, what's this god? It's like, he's not a god. He's just this crazy big-ass dragon thing. But he's also in that group. Speaking of which, hold up a second. Hold on. Hold the phone. I got a gift for you guys. In a sense. You're not going to find this anywhere else. Emu, Nidhogg, Nika. Feast your eyes. And this is April only. And we've got a general buy 2, get 3 spring sale going right now. Buy 2, get 3 from any posters you like, all of these other characters that you like. But yeah, if you like that emu design and if you want it, we got it for you. We got it for you right off the bat. If you want a Nidhogg poster, we got you. If you want all 3, if you want the God Trio, you can get that along with 2 other posters for free. So hop on over to the site. Yeah, we got y'all. We got you. Look at this shit. We got you. Here, let me share it for the people. We've got a huge deal going for these posters right now. Huge deal going for these posters, and yeah, you're just not gonna find these anywhere else. Literally. If you want some emu art, there's nowhere else to look. And you're not gonna get a deal like this anywhere else either. And it's April only. This God Trio is the spring special, April only. So get them while you can. One second. All right. Yeah, crazy good deal. Buy 2, get 3. So you can get 5 posters for the price of 2. 5 posters for the price of 2. So make sure you go ahead and get yours while you can, while we got the deal running. Let's see. Factory Cow, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 2 years now. Do you think Emu's Lunarian flames have been extinguished, which is why he's coughing up blood, and why he needs York to make him a replacement flame? That's a really interesting idea. But I'm not sold on the idea that Emu himself is a Lunarian in the first place, actually. I think he might be, but I think what we're seeing is his Zoan form, right? I think we're seeing him in his Zoan form. Like, it's got clouds and stuff, right? So this is... I don't know if this necessarily makes him a Lunarian, personally. Because it looks nothing like his normal form, right? So if this is his Zoan form, then, yeah, I'm not going to jump to assuming he's a Lunarian. New X7, thanks to the 10, convinced that Luffy and Roger's dream is to turn the world upside down. Roger's words to Rayleigh, Whitebeard's final words, Shanks and Buggy, North and South Pole, Sabo, hell, the underworld at the top of the world. So, if we play with that idea, right, turn the world upside down, right now it feels like you could argue that draining the sea is, in a sense, turning the world upside down, right? The thing is that Roger didn't have a real dream back then. I feel like Roger's dream solidified later in life. But, yeah, you could argue that, like, essentially flipping it so that the world is more land than sea, as opposed to right now where it's more sea than land. That could be onto something. Why did wings show up, but then we don't see it in final form? Let's see. Let's get a better visual of Emu. That's my only thought. He could very well be a Lunarian. I'm not saying he's not, but I think we need a clearer look at him. Emu Carnage, thanks for the 5. Emu must have a time limit, otherwise everyone is cooked. There's got to be, like, Oda's already planting a weakness there right off the bat, right? So we've got an out. Let's get the Streamlights up to 100 real quick. So we've got an out for sure. Oda already planted a weakness right off the bat. We know we can say with a high degree of confidence that he's not being defeated outright in Elbaf, right? So Oda's going to do something with that weakness. It's interesting because you would assume Emu has the immortality surgery done on him, right? So I wonder if it's more so like when he uses his abilities, that's what drains him or something. Otherwise, he's just normally immortal. I wonder if that's why it's so risky for him to come down and fight. There must be conditions to the immortality. Taptir Treviso, thanks to the 2. Is Emu being called a fairy tale ripoff design? I mean, like, I remember Acnologia is what I would think of in human form. I think at the moment I don't want to I got a ton of praise for the way Oda did Emu's entrance. Amazing, amazing entrance. Phenomenal entrance. Phenomenal entrance. Design, I'm not going to judge too early because we're not getting a very detailed design right here, right? So we're getting a glimpse of it and we see the face. It's not, it's cool. I think it's cool. The way I would put it is if I had never read any other manga than One Piece and I was just reading One Piece, I would think that this design is like amazing. The problem is that, like, obviously there's a lot of other like people are drawing comparisons to the Okotsuki or is that what the Ototsuki, whatever they are, the Naruto characters. You just brought up Acnologia from Fairy Tail. I assume that's what you're talking about. My mind actually went first to Black Clover's Devils. I think Black Clover has some phenomenal designs for devils across the board. But I think Oda's got, like, it's tricky because, like, we all thought King's design was really, really cool, right? We all thought King's design was really cool when it was first unveiled. I think that the standards are just going to be really, really high for Emu. So yeah, let's just wait and see. Let's just wait and see a more detailed shot. But I think it looks cool. One Piece, One Life, thanks to the 5. Yo Morge, wild chapter. Side note, how strong do you think Shamrock is? I always say he got to be in the top 6 at least if he's a Shanks opponent. The thing is, so Shamrock's 2 opponents that seem to be on the horizon, I think are either Shanks or Loki, right? Because he was Shanks goes without explanation. Loki is who Shamrock was beefing with at the start of the Elbaf arc, so there's some potential there. I think, like, some people, my instinct would be to say Shamrock's like at least Yonko level. But we've been down this path before with Garling. The thing is, Garling could actually even be Yonko level, and it's just that Rox was just that strong that he still low diff, mid diffed him, whatever you want to say, regardless, right? So that's not out of the question. But I'm not just going to jump to assuming Shamrock is like, because the big difference between Shanks and Shamrock is that, well, sure, Shamrock's got the boost from Emu with the tattoo, but Shamrock and the Celestial Dragons in general are coddled. They're not battle-hardened. They don't have to fight that often. Shamrock was apparently able to deal with whatever mess was going on in the Holy Land, so that's some Shamrock hype right there. And just the fact that his 2 scheduled opponents, his 2 possible scheduled opponents are both top 5-ish characters in the story, or in the modern day, whatever you want to say, is huge for him. And some people have even gone so far as to say that Shamrock might have the Hellfire Serpent fruit or something like that, right? So I'm going to go out and say, at the risk of being burned again with the Garling situation, I'm going to go out and say that Shamrock, I wouldn't be surprised if he's like top 5 or something today, or like a Yonko level character, or higher, whatever we want to say. But I'm going to keep I'm not going to invest hard in him at the moment. In Shamrock stocks. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. More Jesse. I would like to point myself as the leader of the Oda's Angels. This is the greatest story Oda ever told. Emu's convo with the Warkiri was moving. I think Emu's convo with the Gorosei was pretty cool. I actually liked, Shamrock's also got 2 arms. That's true. I actually really liked I really loved the scene with the Gorosei and Emu. It just felt cool seeing all those bigwigs of the world government like actually have a debate and conversation about what to do next. And obviously they go with Emu's choice in the end, but it just felt like more, I don't know, like it felt like more for insight into how they function, you know? Henchme, thanks for the 2. Oda's false silhouette game is consistent. Yeah. Although, again, I feel like it's really hard to judge this because this is Emu's Zoan form, right? So his true form could genuinely still be a shadow. You know, I want to understand how much of this is just Emu in his Zoan form versus how much of it is Emu, like, we're actually getting Emu's normal human design here, or what, you know? Human, Lunarian, whatever you want to say. Lil Emu, thanks for the 2. Emu's just me with white hair and horns. I'm moved. GDN, thanks for the 5. How do you feel knowing Kid would solo the Holy Knights with their metal hearts? Also, why doesn't Green Bull just grow fruit trees from Orishua? That's a good question. Maybe the Celestial Dragons don't like fruits, but he could grow other crops and shit, right? I don't know. That's a really good question. Don't ask too many questions. You know what? You know what's interesting? There might be limits to how devil fruits work in that sense, because even Streusen, whose ability is to create food, supposedly the food that he makes doesn't taste good, you know? And that's his literal ability is making food. So I wouldn't be surprised if Green Bull's devil fruit can't really make quality food. Kid soloing the Holy Knights with their metal hearts. In theory, that's how it works, but at the same time, people theorized in the past that Kid could Kid could beat Mihawk by just taking a sword or something, and turns out that doesn't really work like that, you know? So I wouldn't, but Holy Knights are obviously a lot weaker, so I don't know. Julian Reed, thanks for the 10. Casting away their follies shows how serious the world government is getting about this. For the first time ever, they will not approach this conflict as if they're above it. World government is moving different in the final saga. Yeah, I definitely think it's really cool. I definitely think the way Oda's writing off this is really cool. Love the interactions at the beginning of the chapter. If it was in any question that Garling is kind of the premier Gorosei, I think this chapter kind of confirms it. He seems to sort of command the room in the way the other Gorosei don't. But yeah, let's get stream likes up to 150 real quick. Stormfox, thanks for the 5. Oda did the low point of the arc, but for the villains. All was lost for the Holy Knights until their leader made a grand entrance, so the Straughts lose, ? And I think it's kind of going back and forth, because first the Holy Knights had the Straughts on the ropes, right? Then the Straughts had a comeback, and then they got the Holy Knights on the ropes, right? But now Imu's coming and turning the tide in the reverse. So, you know, that's kind of par for the course for a lot of One Piece arcs. Like, you could look at Thriller Bark, right? Like, Thriller Bark. Same situation, where first the Straughts kind of get caught slacking, I guess you could say. And they get fucked up a little bit towards the beginning of the arc. They get their shadow stolen or whatever, and then the Straughts come back. They beat up all of the Thriller Bark, all of Gecko Moria's minions or whatever. Then Gecko Moria drops ores on them, so then the momentum shifts back. So I'm not going to jump to Straughts lose or not. I don't think the Straughts need to lose. Like, this isn't a raid fail situation. I don't think the Straughts need to lose here or anything like that. I just think that the arc should have, like, Imu should bring a requisite amount of, like, shift in tone, like, fear factor, intimidation. I'm not saying Luffy needs to be running around scared or anything, but just, you know, make things feel heavy, you know? Damian Wright, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 31 months, man. Thanks for the long-time support. Make sure to get your submissions in for the Pirate King podcast. For those of you who don't know, the Pirate King podcast is my once-a-month podcast where all Pirate King members can submit questions about One Piece, other anime, manga, video games, TV, movies, real life, whatever. And I go through and answer every single question one by one in far greater depth and detail, and being generally more open than even on stream. And it's usually about an hour and a half long, and submissions are open right now. So submissions are open right now. If you want to check out Pirate King, the Pirate King podcast, if you want to check out Pirate King tier, then definitely go head on over, consider supporting as a member. And yeah, the Pirate King podcast will be recorded and out soon. Yeah. Malkazara, thanks. Continue on. Not a very good introductory panel, in my opinion. I think I like the design, but you would think Oda would draw a clearer shot of Imu for his introduction. I see what you're saying. So, like, it reminds me of Oda's initial introduction for us of Imu in the first place, where I think if you go back to the Empty Throne scene, right, Oda doesn't actually show us Imu's full form. We kind of just get a vague look at it, and then a look at, you know, Imu's eye close up, right? And I get the sense that Oda was going for something similar here, where he's not trying to, like, he's going for the dramatic entrance more than anything, the framing and all that. And, you know, just positioning Imu at the top of the castle with a cool-looking design, even if we don't get, like, the clearest shot. And then Oda's showing us a close-up shot of the face. I imagine next chapter we will get the full sort of body shot in more detail. I think it's okay. not okay. I think it's good the way that he did it. It just feels weird in a week-to-week reading experience, because if we were reading these chapters back to back, then it all flows. Like, we get this crazy big dramatic entrance, we get a shot of Imu's face close up, we're like, holy shit, then we turn the page to the next chapter, and then presumably the start of next chapter is a clear shot of Imu's full design, you know? So I think it's okay, personally. Malkazar, thanks for the 6. The more I learn about this Imu guy, the more I think he's a real jerk. Shouts to Norm McDonald. Ison, thanks for the 2. Is my guy Zoro gonna get the NL treatment? Shit. I don't know. Oda has not really used Zoro to hype up another character in all of post-time skip. In general, Oda does that very, very rarely with Zoro. It's interesting. Oda's actually... kind of the balance is that Oda's very, very, very frequently, he's very generous with using Sanji as a hype tool. So that's why, like, both pre-time skip and post-time skip, it'll just be like, hype up a new villain, fuck it, throw Sanji at him for whatever reason, you know? Okay, Sanji loses, whatever, right? And then Sanji will get his good wins, you know, at whatever points. But the reason that Sanji often gets some slander for extended periods of time is because Oda's okay with not giving him shit for a long time and kind of using him as a hype tool, okay? Luffy actually gets used as a hype tool as well pretty frequently, because the strongest way to establish a new villain is to have Luffy kind of get fucked up by him, you know? So Luffy actually gets used as a hype tool often, but Luffy also gets the biggest wins. So it pretty much balances it out. It's like, you took like 10 losses to Kaido, but who put Kaido down, huh? Who put Kaido down in the end? Yeah. So, you know, we only remember the last round. But I'm just kidding. People bring up that Kaido, you know, people bring up Kaido's record against Luffy a lot. But it's just that at the end of the day, there's no question that Luffy gets the spotlight when it matters. Zoro's situation is interesting because Zoro obviously is never going to get all the big wins that Luffy does. You know, that's just not his role. But Oda doesn't treat him like Sanji. Out of the monster trio, Oda's actually, like, part of the reason Zoro gets to preserve this sort of image is because Oda also uses him the least as a hype tool, even compared to Luffy. Like, out of the monster trio, Sanji's used as a hype tool probably the most frequently and probably the most loosely. Like, there's fucking times pre-time skip where I'm like, Oda, what are you doing, man? Like, fucking Mont Blanc Cricket pops up out of the water, and he's going, like, extreme diff with Sanji. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, Sanji will just get used as a hype tool for whatever the fuck Oda feels like. Luffy will get used as a hype tool somewhat frequently, actually, but still will get the big, big wins that'll make you forget about the bad moments. And then Zoro will almost never, he'll never get the big wins that Luffy gets, but he is pretty much never used as a hype tool, in that, like, even if he goes up against a character that's, like, clearly stronger than him, like, the closest you'll get is something like Fujitora. The closest you'll get is something like Fujitora, at least post-time skip, where we can clearly tell that Zoro is not as strong as Fujitora, but even in the end, Zoro doesn't look bad. In fact, Zoro fans took that showing and ran with it as a feat for Zoro for, like, years and years, at least to Wano. So that's kind of the way that the cards have played out, at least post-time skip. Pre-time skip, I think we had some more moments of Zoro getting used as a hype tool. NL, obviously. Lucci. Those are the two that I can really think of. I guess Oars round 1. It was still rare, and then post-time skip, it almost never happens. So I don't know if it would happen here. Cisco, thanks for the 2. Love the 2 pages that show Imu feeling nostalgic. Oh, what about Lucci post-time skip? I don't view that as Zoro being used as a hype tool there. Like, that was actually just straight up a fight for Zoro. Like, that's an extended fight for Zoro that he won in the end, right? So it wasn't a fight that was used. When we say hype tool, we mean, like, the character loses in order to, often quickly, a character loses often quickly to establish the threat of a new villain, so that, to set the bar for future fights, right? So that's not really what happened with the Lucci fight. That was kind of just like, well, Zoro, I guess you could say, whatever, underperformed to expectations and struggled more against a villain that he was supposed to beat. but that fight wasn't really used as a tool to hype Lucci or something like that, as a future villain. That was a loss for Lucci in the end. It's just that it was a harder loss, a harder fought win for Zoro than people thought. Hype tool specifically, you get what I'm saying? That's a bad showing. That's different. Zoro's had bad showings. Are still pretty rare, but he's had, showings that you're I don't know. He struggled with, if I had to stretch, he struggled with Denjiro in the Flower Capital. I guess, Zoro had, characters can have, bad showings where they struggle more in a fight than they should. But hype tool is specifically the idea of, new villain kind of introduced, quickly have a protagonist lose to them to establish how strong said villain is, right? Oda almost never does that with Zoro. Cisco, thanks for the 2. Love the 2 pages that show Emu feeling nostalgic. Yeah, but it's also him just having an aneurysm. Fuck all these fucking people over all the years. Fuck these guys. They're just trying to fuck up my system. Fuck these pieces of shit. Let's get the stream likes up to 200. Retro Records, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 42 months. We got the drums of oppression before Blackbeard, lol. That's big hype for Blackbeard down the line. Also, RIP to all the emu is a girl theories. Thanks for the content, Morge. Oh, I thank you. I'm happy you enjoyed and I appreciate the support, man. Yeah, I don't think emu is a woman theories were ever good just based on how Oda is as a writer, It was just always very, very unlikely. And yeah, I think that the fact that we're getting drums of oppression and shit, all of this before Blackbeard, is good signs if you're a Blackbeard fan. Here, let me throw the poll to you guys. And we can talk about this again in this Monday stream, but how do you guys feel? Final villain. Let me see if the chapter shifted the needle for you guys. So we did this poll. The last times I've done this poll in recent weeks, it's generally skewed about close to 70-30 in Blackbeard's favor. I'm curious if this chapter shifted people's opinions a bit. Instant Messenger Sama, thanks for the 5. I bet he has more forms than Kaido. Yeah, very possibly. It's cool that he's in his, what seems to be his awakened form already, unless the black... No, it's clouds and stuff, right? So it should be awakened form as is, right? Abraham's GT, thanks for the 5. What is your top 5 for the present in terms of power scaling and also in terms of who you like the most? Power scaling is really hard right now. You know what I've been doing? I've been separating Shanks, Mihawk. I've been refusing to rank these characters as of late. Shanks, Mihawk, Dragon, Akainu, Shamrock. I set them aside. Just too many question marks, right? So if we set them aside, because right now I got Emu 1, Loki 2, But if Shanks did straight up beat Loki, then you gotta have Shanks 2. But then you got the Mihawk arguments, then it's okay, is it Mihawk 2? But then you got, I don't even want to talk about fucking Dragon, because so many question marks there. So let's just move those guys aside, right? I'm just going to go based on what we've seen in action, with a good number of showings. Okay, let's go with that, right? Emu 1. Loki 2. Again, ignoring Shanks, Mihawk, Dragon, Akainu, Shamrock, which really actually puts me in quite a bind. It's most of the characters right there. I'd have Luffy 3 in that group. Luffy 3. I guess fucking Warcury 4. Am I forgetting characters? I feel like I'm fucking forgetting characters. No, Garling. I think Garling outclasses Warcury. So let's say Garling 4. I'm not fucking ranking Ragnar. I'm sorry. I got Blackbeard higher than... I just don't know about Blackbeard. It's too hard. I'm not doing a top 5 in terms of present powers. It's too hard. Because all the juicy characters are also the question mark characters. In In terms of who I like the most, I'm going to ignore Straw Hats here for the purposes of this question. In terms of who I like the most, love Loki as a side character, phenomenal side character. I wish Wiper would come back, but he's been bumped to probably second favorite character, side character after Loki. Dragon is awesome, especially with his backstory. Shanks and Mihawk would round it out. Those are the characters who like if we cut away to a chapter about Dragon, I'm all for it. If we cut away to a chapter about Shanks, all for it. Chapter about Mihawk, all for it. Those are the characters that'll get me the most excited. Yeah, characters I wish we could get more of, but I accept that their time in the story may have waned, is Smoker, Wiper. I like Kobe as well. Mr. MMF2, thanks a lot. Yo, Morge, so Ragnar froze the Galila Giants? Also, how is Wukong going for you? I just got the Plat Trophy. It wasn't that tough, to be honest. So, with Wukong... Ragnar froze the Galila Giants. I do think that is very likely. Wukong, I want to keep that short because everybody wants to talk about the chapter right now. I put a pause on it. I hit Yellow Luong, and then I struggled with him. And then I took a pause on it because... I think it was cutting into my workday time, and then I was like, I'll deal with this tomorrow. And then I just kept the pause going for some time. And then life got pretty busy. And then I was like, okay, well, now if I go back to play the game, I have to like relearn a little bit if I want to beat Yellow Luong. I do think I'm fighting Yellow Luong a little bit earlier than I should be from what I'm reading online. But I still feel like it's doable. But now I'm just like, okay, well, I have to get past that roadblock once I go back to it. So between the move and everything like that, probably once the Xbox is set back up and I feel like I got a little bit more free time, then I'll go back to playing Wukong. But I played the Soulsborne games and everything like that, and I find Yellow Luong to be very tough, personally. Again, part of that might be the point in the game that I'm fighting in, which might be a little bit early. Okay. Justin, thanks for the 2. Good to see you, man. Thoughts on Nami being the first to sense Imu's entry? I'm not going to read too much into that. There's always the possibility that Nami develops observation haki, but it's also kind of just like there's crazy rumbling and stuff like that. It's just could just be whoever Oda wants to cut to first. You know? Tio Treviso, thanks for the 2. Imu uses the blade. Does that make him a swordsman? I think the black blade argument just took a major hit here. I think it just took a terrible, terrible hit. All right, so the polling shows that opinions have not really changed. We still got about close to 70% of people feeling that Blackbeard is the final villain. Cool. I'm on board. Yeah, the Black Blade agenda just took a big hit, right? Tom, thanks for the 5. Just got here. Do you think Imu has the devil fruit? To me, it's pretty clear that's what the text box means, but I see people saying it's not / we don't know. There was some explanation about like how katakana and shit like that means. I don't or kanji. I don't know what that means necessarily. Viz might help shed some light on it. But I've been on the train that Imu has the devil fruit, but specifically the sea devil fruit, because that is what has been referenced throughout earlier in the story, the existence of a sea devil. It would parallel sea devil, parallels the sun god, right? Direct counterparts. And the fact that all of Imu's abilities are sea-themed. Shallow sea contract, deep sea contract, deep sea contract, yada yada. So I think all of it follows. I think he essentially will have devil abilities and a devil form, but the same way that Oda calls Luffy the sun god, even though Luffy has no like actual sun imagery, I think that Imu will be the sea devil fruit, but most of his powers can be more devil than sea, if that makes sense. Lil Emu, thanks for the 5. Referencing Imu's tattoos, someone said that Luffy has gears and Imu has circuits. Interesting idea considering Sommer's heart, ancient tech, abyss connections, etc. There's a great theory by Hidden Island about a story that Oda seems to be basing a lot of ideas of One Piece on, called The Music of Marie or something, and that involved like a ruler of the world that was actually an automaton. So yeah, I think it'd be really cool if Oda's drawing inspiration from that here. Yoko, thanks for the 2. Someone important has to die. Imu has to look good. I don't know if anyone's dying. I don't I don't know if I would go that far. I don't know if anyone's dying. It'd be cool if someone dies, but I don't know. I don't think somebody has to die. I don't think somebody has to die, especially because this isn't like the end-all, be-all, this is not the last we're seeing of Emu. So Emu can be just a really terrifying threat. Like, no one died in Sabaody, but we still came away from it fucking with PTSD about, what the Strahds just went to. I think that's good enough. Gabriel Lantis, thanks for the 5. Thoughts on Shanks showing... Like, I'll keep saying this, I don't think characters need to die in One Piece. All I ask for, which is a completely reasonable request in my opinion, is just don't pretend they're gonna die. Or don't pretend that... That's the thing. It's okay to pretend they're gonna die and then not do it. That's like tension or whatever. Don't pretend that they have died and then reveal that they're alive. That's the frustrating thing. Don't pretend that they're dead and then say that they're not dead. That's all I ask for. It's such a low bar. It's an insanely low bar. Anyway, Gabriel Lantis, thanks to 5. Thoughts on Shanks showing up to drive Emu back? I think Emu will kill Shanks, giving Luffy the motivation to defeat the world government. Tinfoil could be Shanks' plan. Look, if Shanks showed up and dropped some Joy Boy type hockey, like people like the Giants referenced at Egghead, that would be like... that would be so fucking insane. But in theory, it's, it's Oda suggested it's possible back at Egghead, right? My thoughts on that are, I don't think Emu will kill Shanks. I think if Shanks dies, it will be to Blackbeard. I think that there's just way more setup for that than anything else. I think for Luffy, motivation to defeat the world government, I think that can be formed in different ways. Luffy clearly already does not like this Emu dude, Luffy's like, the more I see this Emu guy, the more I don't like him. So I think that's fine. And yeah, I think Luffy... I think Blackbeard killing Shanks is more likely. I think that... And the last thing is, while I think it'd be really cool if Shanks shows up to help in this battle, I also feel like... I don't know about, like... That would be like, what, the 50th time that Shanks steps in to save Luffy? And I just feel like the whole point was that the next time that they meet, they're supposed to be, like, equal and everything like that. I don't know if... Part of the reason Shanks didn't want to meet Luffy at Marineford was because it's just, like, Luffy would feel such shame at the reunion being, like, Shanks having to save him, right? It was also why, like, Wano was probably not a good time for them to meet, because Luffy could have handled himself there with the Green Bull situation, but Shanks still gave him a hand, and then this would be yet another situation, so I don't know. On the one hand, I think it's really cool, but on the other hand, I worry what it would mean for Luffy and Shanks' reunion, Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. With the size of the castle in mind, how big do you think Emu is in this form? Oda's been pretty decent with scale so far in Elbaf, so he might be huge. I think that Emu is, really, really big. He's probably bigger than, like, traditional ancient giants, or at least as big. Duck20, thanks for the 2. Riot happened in Holy Lands. Oh, was it a riot? I don't think it was a... Like, riot would imply the Celestial Dragons themselves did something, right? But to me, it seemed like... to me, it seemed like the Holy Land had to be defended by some forces, so I don't know. MD Knight, thanks for the 3. Emu kills Usopp, create greatest ending in fiction. I really hope that... I don't know if I'm ready for Usopp to die here. I don't know. As much as I like the idea, I want him around longer. Let's get the stream likes up to 250 real quick. W Minerva, thanks for the 5. If Loki is top 5 and Mihawk is greater than Shanks and Shanks beat Loki, is Vista top 2? Also, there are Void Sentry robots in the Heaven Realm. Oh shit, that'd be really cool. Yeah, where's Heaven Realm coming into all this? Where's Heaven Realm coming in? Also, I think I'm going to be spot on in my prediction of Elbaf ending around chapter 1200. I think that was the goal that Oda was heading for this entire time. Emu showing up at 1179. I could easily see this stretching another 21 chapters. KY9S, thanks for the 5. Do you agree with the sentiment that there needs to be big consequences caused from Emu? Some even going so far as saying he should catch a Straw Hat body. So there's a lot of talk about death here. I'm actually more reserved on this in that, for me, as long as Oda doesn't pull the shit where he's like, I pretended to kill this character, convinced you all they're dead, and I'm revealing that they're alive, I don't mind. I think that there's a lot of ways that you can establish villain threat. Like, Lucci felt like a really intimidating villain back in Water 7, just from, like, demolishing the Straw Hats straight up, right? Kaido felt like that in Act 1 of Wano right off the bat. You can kind of go down the list. Like, there's lots of things villains can do without killing the main characters that can establish threat very well. I'm also not certain that this is supposed to be an arc where it's like... I'm not certain this is an arc where we are... Sorry. set up for defeat or victory. If I had to bet, I would actually still feel like the Straw Hats are not going to get crushed here necessarily. I feel like we might be headed towards more of a Whole Cake Island type ending, where it was an arc that was used to introduce Big Mom as a threat, made it clear that we can't actually fight and beat Big Mom at this point in time, made it clear that, like, there are consequences to this raid, you know, on Toddle Land, but we're getting out without the villain succeeding. So I think it's complicated. I'm open to a lot of directions from Oda, as long as it's not just all the protagonists. Like, if it's like one chapter of Imu showing off his stuff, and then after that the protagonists all just begin to, like, through the power of friendship, team up and just run a train on Imu, I would not enjoy that. Because Imu's still got to be a threat in the next saga, you know? Like, okay, put it this way. So last arc, I think Oda's got to fix what he did last arc. So last arc in Egghead, remember when the Gorosei all arrived, right? Because that's the direct parallel here. Remember, the Gorosei all arrived at the end of Egghead. Okay, it's the direct parallel. It seemed like things are going swimmingly for the protagonists. Then these crazy big columns of black smoke start erupting all over the island. Everybody's freaking out. 5 monstrosities just pop up, all Admiral level-ish, right? Maybe more, maybe give or take, whatever. Insane, right? Insane reveal, one of the most iconic chapters in One Piece history. You can feel the atmosphere shift with their arrival. And it's just like, what are the Straw Hats going to do now? How do they get out of this? Turns out they kind of just get out of it, okay? That's the thing that you don't want to do here, where it felt like Oda wanted... The Gorosei felt very effective in their first chapter, by the way. Like, when they first came out, Oda was just like... He was just on it. Like, back to back to back, he was just like, Venus Juro, right away. Swept the old island in, like, 5 seconds. Showed himself to be maybe the second fastest character in the story. Took out all the pacifistas. Just like that, right? Immediately. It's like, holy shit. Mars immediately destroys that barrier that everyone had been struggling with for so long, and, like, Jinbei's freaking out about his crazy strong hockey, right? Jupiter eats Luffy right away. Like, just a lot of competence in one fell swoop very quickly, okay? That lasted all of, like, 3 chapters. From then on, it was like Oda had to play this balancing act where the Straw Hats were not supposed to lose in Egghead. In Egghead, it's supposed to feel kind of triumphant with the Straw Hats getting away despite the world government trying to crush them. But at the same time, Oda needs to establish the Gorosei as threats for the final arc. So I personally think that you need to pick a lane. Like, when you're introducing villains and want to establish their threat, you gotta either make them make them win and, like, crush the heroes, or is this supposed to be a triumphant arc where everybody gets off scot-free and, like, you know, the vibes are good at the end, right? I think you gotta pick a lane, because otherwise you get that Egghead sort of feeling towards the end. Everybody loves Egghead as an arc, but the ending is where it's a lot spottier for people, not just because of Vegapunk's speech, but kind of just because the tone is all over the place. Like, what are we supposed to feel about the Gorosei? Some people felt like the Gorosei are frauds at the end of all that, and I don't think Oda wanted us to feel like the Gorosei are frauds. So my big question is, if Oda's final conclusion to this Elbaf storyline is meant to be similar to Egghead, wherein, what's the job of Egghead at the end, right? I want to introduce the villains that are coming up in the final arc, the Gorosei. They're going to be really powerful bad guys that have to be defeated in the final war. I need to show them off first. I need to establish their threat, but I don't want the Straw Hats to lose, right? That was the Egghead situation. If Oda's doing the same thing here, which is like, Imu is going to be one of the main villains of the final war, I need to use the Elbaf arc to start introducing him, establish him as a big bad threat, show off how strong he is, but I don't want the Straw Hats to lose. You risk the Egghead situation again, wherein like we're in this weird middle ground where we can see the Gorosei are strong, right? And we can logically tell that, but at times it kind of felt like they were ineffective at the end of the day at really putting down the Straw Hats, and the Straw Hats got out basically unscathed at the end of it, right? I hope that Oda's not trying to do both things here. I hope he can kind of pick a lane wherein, like, if you want to make Imu feel effective and like a really big, powerful, strong threat, like the ultimate threat for the final war, then like just go hard on that and actually fuck the Straw Hats up. Like, they can still get away at the end if that's the direction that it needs to go, but still make us feel like it's not easy and it's a struggle, and like the heroes are pressed, like they're pressed by the situation. That was the thing. Like with the Gorosei, we hit a point where like Luffy's punching Warcury a bunch and it's not working, and he's actually hurting his hand, and Luffy's having to run away. But the way Oda chose to portray it was literally like Luffy was laughing with Dorian Brogy and saying like, I can't hurt him, let's run away, ha ha ha. And just that choice immediately changes how the framing of the situation, right? It's not like, oh, in Sabaody, where it's like Luffy's screaming like, we're fucked, we gotta run, right? When you're having Luffy laugh and treat it very casually and just like, oh, we can't beat this guy, let's run away, it just changes how Warcury is being portrayed. It's two very, very different vibes, right? So I hope that whatever route Oda goes, if the Straw Hats are supposed to drive out Imu, make it a really, really hard-fought win, where, like, you know, kind of like the Oars win was, where the Straw Hats were getting fucked up most of that fight. They had their moments, and finally they, like, through moving heaven and earth, they were able to take care of Oars, right? At least for the moment, right? Either do it like that, or give us, like, straight up like a Sabaody type situation, and then maybe they straight up barely escape. But please don't go the Egghead route, where, like, you want to play up how strong Imu is, but not harsh the vibe too much. That's the simplest way I could say with the Gorosei situation. Oda wanted to establish in Egghead how strong and scary the Gorosei were, but he didn't want to harsh the vibe, because he still wanted the Straw Hats to be celebrating at the end. So it's like, you can't really do both, you know? Shah, thanks a lot. Ragnar froze the hat in Marijua. People have been bringing that up. I think there's a really good chance of that. I wonder what the hat really does, you know? Aztec Carry, thanks for the 5. I thought the hat's symbolic, but if it's frozen, then maybe it's something else. Aztec Carry, thanks for the 5. Is Imu going to kidnap Luffy and Loki, or manage the enslaved giants of Elbaf? Hold on. Is Imu going to kidnap Luffy and Loki, or manage the enslaved giants of Elbaf? Only new giant pirates and Straw Hats escape. Straw Hats need to be trained. I don't know. Again, this is really hard. I'm leaning towards this is not going to be an overall crushing defeat. I don't think that Luffy and Loki are getting captured and such. I don't think it's going to be like a crushing defeat. Partly because the themes of Elbaf are very positive. It's about like standing up, finding your strength again, yada yada. And I know people are going to be like, Morge, but Wano had those themes and you said the raid would fail. Yes, as a halfway point of the arc. I still always said that by the end of Wano, it'll be a success. Like, they will defeat Kaido and stuff, because that's just the storyline. The storyline is about succeeding despite adversity. I just said that there needs to be some adversity there first before we get the succeeding. Oda didn't feel the same way, right? With Elbaf, it does feel like most of the themes are about, like, rising up again at the end of the day, and, you know, Jarl's whole speech and everything like that. I don't know if this is gonna be like a storyline where all the Elbaf giants are about like rallying themselves and getting back up on their feet and finding their warrior spirit just to get fucking smashed into 1,000 pieces by Imu. It would be really dramatic, but I don't know if Oda's gonna go that far to crush the spirits of the giants. I don't know. I think next chapter will tell us a lot. Zeshipa, thanks for the 2. Imu versus Blackbeard. Buggy beats both by accident, finds the One Piece. I think that is the most likely outcome. If Blackbeard defeats Imu, I think it'll be through backstabbing after other characters do most of the work. Factory Cow, thanks for the 5. Any thoughts on the first 20 abilities and what the other ones are? Possible that Momo and Shirahoshi have inherited some of the original powers. I think that's just referring to the 20 original kings, you know? Celestial dragons. Bunfagum, thanks for the 7. Imu is so insecure that he sees the inevitability of the ebb and flow of the ages, yet still desperately pushes against the tides of fate. Great stuff. I don't think that I think it is great stuff, great writing, but I don't think that's insecurity. I think that's just like you kind of just gotta do that, you know? Like just he's seeing the writing on the wall because it's correct, you know? So like he's got to actually do something about it to try, you know? I don't think just throwing his hands up would be any better, and just accepting it would be any better. Kecker's boy, thanks for the 5. The elders seem worried for Imu's safety, and he seems to be coughing up blood being away from the capital. What the fuck is he if he gets seriously hurt here? I think getting him seriously hurt here would be good to like maybe through his own limits of his powers, like there's a drawback or consequence to his powers, because Imu seems to be so powerful that if he is allowed to just straight up teleport and travel wherever he wants to fuck up characters or whatever, it breaks the game a little bit, right? So it's good if we see Imu in action this once, and then after that we kind of get to save him for the final war. Tempo, thanks for bringing a Yonko tier member for 7 months. Dragon didn't make Emu's top 10. Does this ass really just look east and nothing else? Truly the world's worst criminal. That was straight up embarrassing. As a big Dragon believer, it was genuinely very embarrassing. I'm just like, it's not like Emu doesn't know about Dragon. Like, the Revolutionary Army is a hot topic. He's supposed to be like the most wanted character of that. He's a fucking D, son of Garp, all of this. Like, there's no way Emu doesn't know about him. He just doesn't rate him. He rated Baby Shirahoshi before him. Embarrassing stuff for Dragon. And look, I'm a huge Dragon supporter, but I'm just like, man, he didn't get a shout out. Lars Mango, thanks for the 7. Man, where was character work of this level for Kaido? Did more for Imu's character in 1 chapter than he did for Kaido in 150. So as much as I love laughing at and making fun of Kaido, I do disagree. I think that Kaido has had plenty of moments of dialogue, etc., that shed light on his character for quite some time. I think this is a bit of recency bias there. Again, as much as I love to shit on Kaido and Wano, I think that Kaido's biggest flaw in terms of his writing was how poorly complete. Bringing up memes is kind of stupid, but like it is reminiscent of that horse meme, right? Where it's like, you know, half the horse is drawn well, but then once you get to the last part of the horse, it's like a fucking child's drawing or whatever, right? I think that's how I feel about Kaido, where the potential, like the early writing for him was really good and seemed to set up a lot of depth for the character, but then by the time you get to the end of it, it's just like, it's kind of ass. Dare Boppler, thanks for the 2. Jupiter is a traitor, more evidence this chapter. I am on the Jupiter is a traitor train. I've talked about this in past videos. I want to wait for the Viz translations before we get too far into the Jupiter traitor route, but I do think that there's a strong possibility. Fatingo, thanks for bringing a Yonko tier member for 34 months. Motherfucker looked like an Otsutsuki from late game Naruto / early Boruto. No disrespect to the design. It was unexpected, but I just found the design kind of wild. It was very, very different from what I think a lot of us were expecting. Also, let's get the stream likes up to 300 real quick. Yeah, how'd you guys like the design? How do we like the design? How do you guys like the design? Here we go. Hold on. Emu's design. Hold on. There we go. I like the design a lot. If I were voting, I think I would go with surpassed expectations. Because I was on the train that like what you see is what you get. I think the shadow form is it's kind of it. Gabs, I'm getting scared for Zolo getting the NL treatment. Oh my god. Zoro fans are quaking in their boots at the possibility that their sword god might take his first loss in all of post time skip? Has Zoro had a concrete loss in post time skip? Has it happened? Am I insane? Has Zoro had a straight up loss in post time skip? I don't think so, right? Eric, thanks for the 2. Run a train on Emu. Morge, 426. Hey, if they do that. Factory Cat, thanks for the 2. I mean, like, Loki's just like, this is the guy that fucked up my dad. Luffy's like, this is the guy that fucked up Usopp. Zoro's like, this guy is kind of a swordsman. They're all just rubbing their hands, gathered around the Emu's casting couch. I just hope that Oda doesn't give him that treatment. Factory Cat, thanks for the 2. Emu kills Saul for being a D. Balance is restored. If Oda has Saul killed in this chapter, or in Elbaf, I will be so upset because it's so, like, I would be so fucking, like, if you're gonna bring him back, then just keep him. Because it's so stupid to do the same thing twice and expect me to give a shit. Kill Jarl. Jarl's fucking old as fuck. Jarl, Gaban, a lot of options here. Nestor Ramos, thanks for the 5. I don't see Oda having Emu lose. He'll likely overpower everyone. Any third party like Shanks might step in. Also, someone is getting kidnapped. I think that those are all good possibilities. I mean, like, I remember when Elbaf's initial plot was like, oh no, they might capture 10 giant kids as hostages or whatever. And I was just like, this feels like, it almost felt like a filler plot by the villains. Because I was like, how far is this really going to go? Is this like really the end of Elbaf if this shit happens? But it was just a smoke screen for Oda's true plot. Morgie overrated Saul's death in the flashback so fucking much. That is the most insane defense of Oda bringing back Saul I've ever seen. Overrated death. It's like one of the greatest scenes in all of One Piece. The finale of Ohara. And you can literally just go watch One Piece reactors. Go watch people who are watching One Piece blind for the first time. That reaction is always you got grown men like with tears and snot coming out of their eyes when they watch that scene. I like watching One Piece reactions of like a lot of my favorite scenes. That was always like one of the best ones ever. That's like always a absolute gold. I don't think I've seen a reactor not cry during that scene. Drink water. Thanks for the 2. Imagine Zoro can't cut Sommer's heart. Needs advanced Conqueror's Haki. That'd be funny. Dear Treviso, thanks for the 2, man. Gap of Emu and Shanks' gen is closer than you think. Gap of Emu and Shanks' generation. Are you saying like Shanks, Mihawk, Dragon? So the way I see it is this. I think that there's not going to be a huge gap between like Emu and Loki. The problem is that Loki is like, I'd say, but not a huge gap. I would say that, what I mean, how do I say this? When we saw Emu at God Valley, even just in his shadow form, Emu was like so far above the likes of Rocks, Roger, Whitebeard, yada yada. And you can be like, well, some of them weren't in their prime. It doesn't really, like, it didn't seem like it mattered, right? Sure, give Roger 2 more years or something like that, a couple more years. It's not going to make a difference there, right? Like, Rocks was in his prime, and it didn't matter, you know? So there's a big gap there, right? And that was just Emu's little shadowy form, right? Loki is clearly a tier above that old gen. Loki is clearly a tier above. The whole Loki Herald battle solidified it, you know, and Loki might have even gotten stronger since then. We don't know, right? So I feel like there's a tier that you would say like is above Pirate King level characters, but below Emu. I'd say that's where Loki would kind of fall, you know? And if Shanks, Mihawk, Dragon also share that tier, like, again, even if we assume that Shanks did straight up beat Loki, I don't think Shanks is like head and like way above Loki. I would imagine that there's just this realm that's just short of the god characters like Emu, probably Joy Boy, that Loki exists in right now, possibly Shanks, Dragon, Mihawk, whatever. But I'm not going to jump to those conclusions just yet. I think it's very interesting to think about. It seems like it's possible Loki would have just beaten Emu with just Ragnar. If Emu didn't have the ability to essentially like leave, you know, like Ragnar essentially seems to bypass Imu's invulnerability just through extremely broken freezing, right? So I think that you could maybe reading too much into it, but you could even just view that as an example of like Loki being above that generation, in the sense that at least against the shadow version of Imu, the old generation couldn't really do anything, but Loki's toolkit is just so broken that Imu can't actually beat someone like Loki without actually using his full body. Again, you could argue it's like a matchup thing, or you could argue that maybe Imu could have broken out and he didn't want to. There's different ways to interpret it, but my interpretation is just like the shadow form was enough for the old gen, but not enough for Loki. The problem is, and everybody might forget this, Loki is nerfed right now. This is not full health Loki. I think that says a lot, that even with Imu himself coming down as the final boss of this storyline, Oda was still like, I can't have Loki at full health. So I think that does suggest quite a bit that, because there's no reason to nerf Loki. There's no reason to say that he's like severely injured unless Loki actually at full strength would be a genuine challenge by himself to Imu. Not saying Loki can solo Imu or anything like that, just that it's not the same as like Imu just like fucking up the old gen, you know? Ariando says, miss my super chat. Okay, hold on. Sorry, 1 second. One second. Sorry, Ariando. Ariando, thanks for the 2. Thoughts on Hadrudin sacrifice at the hands of Imu? No, I hope that doesn't happen, because I don't like Hadrudin as a character, but I like him as a member of the Strahd Grand Fleet. I like the Strahd Grand Fleet structure as is. I don't want to lose. I'd view it as kind of losing, not a literal straw hat, but I don't think it's. I think I would like to see Hadrudin become the King of the Giants. I think that's good for him. Also, let's get the stream likes up to 300 real quick. Sheriff Laffy, thanks for the 5. What did you think of Garling being cut off when he said former Navy HQ? Did he mean Sengoku Kong or maybe retired admirals being called back? What do you guys think? Because what did you guys think on that? Because, Let me see. Former Navy HQ. I want to see the Viz translation or like a Sandman translation or something, because it's confusing. Like, what does it mean? Even our priority should be rallying the military might needed to assert global dominance. Even the former Navy HQ. Like, have the Marines been fucking dissolved in the last like 2 days or something like that? Was Loki's health brought up even once since he transformed? It doesn't need to. Transforming doesn't heal that. The fuck? Why would that? He's nerfed. It was established he's not going to be at full health for months. Maybe I'm wrong. No, then why I don't know. But then I'm just like, why the fuck would they make a huge deal out of it? I think it's the other way. It doesn't need to be established that he's injured anymore, because that was established many times. It needs to be established that he's healed. It's the other way around. I think evidence needs to be provided that he is now better. Aztec Carry, thanks for the 5. Which would you prefer the Strahds to be trained by, Rogers Pirates or Red-Haired Pirates? Except Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji because they were taken. Red-Haired Pirates. He's talking Marineford or G1 currently that is run by Momonga. In Japanese, it's not clear what he was going to say. Yeah, so former Navy HQ being the one that's like in the paradise side of the isle, of the red line, right? But he ate meat before Imu? Yeah, but eating meat doesn't just recover you several months from the verge of death. Even for Luffy, it's never worked like that. Like, when Luffy lost to like it's for simple injuries, like when Luffy got knocked out by Kaido off the roof, sure, eating meat brought him back to full health. Or when like Luffy stabbed him, that got him back to full health. But anytime like Luffy once he reached the verge of death after the final round against Kaido, that took him like weeks to recover. Asta Carey, thanks for the five. Oh no, we covered this. Yeah, I think the red-haired pirates, just because I want to see more of the red-haired pirates, and I think Usopp Yasop dynamic would be cool. Sheriff Laffy, thanks for the 2. Also, maybe Straws get reversed. I don't want to see the Straw Hats get reversed because I really feel like the Straw Hats themselves need more time to shine. I think Luffy got so much in Wano. The Straw Hats got some good stuff in Wano, but then Luffy really got so much more in Egghead. In Egghead, Luffy was just this greedy fucker. Like, there's so many characters to fight in Egghead. There's Lucci, but then there's Kizaru, and then there's 5 Gorosei. And Luffy's basically like, these are all mine. These toys are all for me. That's basically what it was like. It was just like, Lucci first goes to Luffy, and then Zoro gets like the scraps, right? And then Kizaru goes to Luffy. And then Saturn goes to Luffy. And then, a bunch of other Gorosei show up. Okay, they pretty much all go to Luffy. Except for, I guess, Venus Juro. That's the only Gorosei that Luffy didn't fuck with. Or didn't fuck with Luffy, whatever. So, like, another arc, like, where the Strahd's getting reversied, I just wouldn't enjoy seeing that because it's like, you don't really get to see their growth, and their characters are turned into mindless zombies, Cisco, thanks for the 2. Will Emu's observation haki parallel NL's? I think that could be cool. I mean, I imagine many characters have way better observation haki than NL. It's just that, like, I don't think NL could see the future, but NL had crazy range, thanks to some explanation of how his mantra interacted with the Goro Goro no Mi. So I imagine Emu's observation haki will be just as good, if not better. Rihanizur, thanks for the 5. You're telling me we got the Emu reveal in the arc Oda supposedly never planned? That's the crazy thing, which is I feel like some people just started to feel like Elbaf is not even going to happen. If you recall, that was a discussion partway through Egghead that Elbaf's just never even going to happen. Even though it's one of the earliest arcs that Oda clearly signposted for us in the story. Tetrahedral Milk, thanks for the 5. I really hope Usopp got some broken Egghead weapons. Green Beans and Elbaf is crazy. I feel like it's possible that Oda is going the route of like Usopp's just going to have to improve his haki. Because he's given Usopp no upgrades. He's the only character who's working with Brook. I guess Brook and Usopp are both working with the same exact kit that they had in Fishman Island. Oh, and Chopper. Okay, those 3 characters need to do something. But we've had so many signs that those 3 characters are actually going to get some really cool stuff in this arc, Ursaliat, thanks for the 5. Part of the win condition is going to have to be destroying the Abyss Circle in the castle. Otherwise, the world government can just keep doing this again and again. Great point. Everyone, shoutouts to Ursaliat. That is an excellent point at a potential out to getting Emu off the island. I love that. Because we saw with the Gorosei, when Oda set up a situation where the Straw Hats can't win, he had planted an out with the Joy Boy Haki Knot, right? So I feel like something similar may have to happen here. Mihawk the Goat, thanks to the 5. Luffy and Loki will face a stronger Emu than the old generation and perform better. Old generation have been surpassed. I think we need to see that in action first, for sure, before we say that for sure, Because I'm on board with Loki. Like, Loki is just blatantly and pretty much explicitly stronger than the old generation. Because now we have the showings against Harold, like amped Harold. And we have the fact that Loki seemingly dealt with Shadow Form Emu in a way that the old generation couldn't, right? Luffy is a trickier case, because Luffy, I could definitely imagine this arc Luffy surpassing the old generation, but I don't know if Luffy in this moment is there, Like last arc, Luffy still needs to be told by Gaban to use his Conqueror's Haki better. Luffy last arc, it was like, is he even, like, there's still so much debate about Luffy versus Kizaru from just last arc, right? Luffy couldn't even scratch fucking Warcury. So I think there's a long way to go for Luffy to show that he is surpassing the old generation, you know? So I think Luffy's the one that needs to take a step here. Urgert Courtage, thanks for the 2. Emu before Dragon is crazy. Is he OP or forgotten? I like to believe that it's because Dragon is OP. But again, Dragon was left out of Emu's top 10. So you can spin it both ways. Rumbleweeb, thanks a lot. Long time, Loki dying and Usopp getting Ragnar. I mean, the possibility of, like, that's been discussed of, like, maybe Emu in person is able to do Dami reverses that he couldn't do as a shadow. In which case, Usopp could temporarily get Ragnar. That is a discussion that's happened. Obsidian Angel, thanks for the 5. Have we never considered Emu and Blackbeard combining into the final villain? They both have 3 skulls on their designs. So that's actually really interesting because Jasser, he's a guy on Twitter who also has been really helpful for me for providing translations in situations where I'm unsure about TCB or Viz translations. He's talked about that possibility as well. He's talked about that possibility of Emu and Blackbeard combining. I don't know how I would feel about that, but this is not a completely new theory. I think it's something that's been mentioned to me before. That's interesting that 2 people have talked about it now. Joyboy SGLS, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 23 months. Yo, Morge, how the fuck is this arc about to end? You guys want to do a poll? I'm curious how you guys feel. Here, let me give 4 options, okay? How will Elbaf end? Hold on. Hold on. What are all the options? Strats lose, but someone's captured. Strats lose. Hold on. I can only there's a word count limit to the poll options. Someone captured. Okay. Strats lose, everyone escapes. Strats drive Emu out. Yeah, I guess those. Let's say something else. Those are kind of the options I see. Tier Treviso, thanks to 2. Check my Pirate King submission if I need to email instead. Let's see. Let's take a look. Meantime, let me answer this. Bunfagum, thanks for the 7. I think you're misremembering God Valley. Rox was going relative to Emu and sliced his upper body up easily. Dami Reversi, parentheses, hacks, was the game changer. That's true, because Emu couldn't use Dami. You're right. You're fair. You're being very fair. It's just because Dami Reversi couldn't. It can't work on Luffy and Loki for unexplained reasons at the moment, so you are correct. It's not the same thing. So I backtrack that. I'm wrong about that. Dami Reversi is just unfair as a point of comparison. So the real question would be if... the real barometer would be if Luffy and Loki are able to damage Emu in a way that the old generation couldn't. I think at the very least in that regard, Loki's already done something that they couldn't, in that Ragnar does seem to counter Emu's general invulnerability, in that it's freezing in a way that you can't really get out. Taptio Treviso, I do see your submission, so it's all good. I see it from about 47 minutes ago. Yeah, so at the very least, like, obviously, if they could have been affected by Dami Reversi, then honestly, they would have lost even faster than Rocks did, which is pretty embarrassing. But on the flip side, Loki's toolkit is clearly very broken in that he seems to be the only character so far capable of at least doing something to Emu in his shadow form, you know? That One Piece fan, thanks for the 5. I heard someone say that subjecting a Conqueror's will to Emu through Dami Reversi would make their haki weaker. Do you think that might be the case? No, because once Rocks was Dami Reversi'd by Emu, he did a solo sky split with his haki. Like, I think it's pretty blatant that his haki got a lot stronger after the Dami Reversi. Rihanna Zer, thanks for the 5. Oda's obviously set up the win condition already with Emu hacking up blood, just showing up. Clearly setting up Emu can't leave the Holy Land for long. That's very possibly what the condition is, but until we learn what the condition... Like, it might just be every time Emu transforms into that form or something like that, he's injured, but there's not necessarily a time limit. I definitely think it's possible, and I think it's likely that Oda's got sort of, like, out for the heroes already planted, but I don't know if it's that yet specifically. Scuba, thanks for the 10. Blackbeard in 441 says, the other thing my darkness can suck in is the devil's power. Darkness Blackbeard controls connected to the abyss, both labeled Black Smoke in chapter 440 and 1179. Final villain of One Piece, Davy D. Teach. Look, I'm on board. I'm on board with Blackbeard and him being the perfect counter to Emu, maybe stealing Emu's powers, whatever it may be. We just gotta wait and see. Hassan Batla 2805, thanks for the 10. I don't know if anyone's talked about this, but Garling willingly had children with a woman from God's Valley, whose inhabitants are descendants from Davy Jones. And then this chapter, this man definitely has plans. Yeah, Garling is... So the thing is, Garling is like genuinely a really fascinating character. And it's clear that he really does seem to be the operating on a different level from the rest of the Gorosei. And maybe even commands the most respect out of them, despite being the newest member. Like, Garling is a fascinating character. It's just the fact that in his first showing in combat, he was just handed such a humiliating L at the hands of Rocks, right? Like, an off-screen L, essentially, right? That's hard to recover. Like, if you remove that chapter, if you just take that chapter out of the equation, everything about Garling makes him feel like such a intimidating, fascinating, potentially complex endgame villain, you know? But then the one chapter that he was made to fight, it's just like Oda had him look like a total joke. Largely to hype up Rocks, but that's just a thing that's going to stick, you know? So Garling, the way he can recover his reputation is obviously being extremely effective in the modern day. But I think that's the one tricky thing. I think Oda didn't need to do Garling like that so early. I think Oda could have let Garling shine a bit first before then using him as a hype tool for Rocks, because it works well both ways. It's even more hype for Rocks if he does that to a character that already seems to be very, very effective and strong and capable and smart and all of that stuff, you know? And it's better for Garling to first get to shine for a while before then being used as a hype tool. Anyway. But I am interested in Garling. I'm very interested in Garling. Rashab Sonny, thanks for the 5. Why do you think Blackbeard is a better final villain than Emu? Personally, I don't respect him enough since he's a coward and does not have Conqueror's haki. I think that the potential is just there to... I mean, I agree. Like, Blackbeard is a coward. He straight up is a coward. He does not act like other Conqueror's haki users. He's not a confirmed Conqueror's haki user for that very reason. He can even get fucked up somewhat by bum-ass characters like Law. You know? But at the same time, Blackbeard is the opportunity for One Piece to do something. So I don't think Emu would be a bad final villain. And I think Emu has tremendous potential as a villain himself. And so this Tuesday's video is a very elaborate breakdown of Emu as a villain so far and the potential that Oda has set up for him and what it seems like Oda's doing with his character. And I think it's all really great stuff. I think Emu could be a phenomenal final villain for One Piece if Oda chooses to go down that route. And I think no matter what, Emu is going to look like a really good villain overall in the grand scheme of things, whether he's the last villain or the penultimate villain. That being said, Blackbeard is simply a more unique concept for a villain, and it just seems to fit the One Piece vibe in a way that feels very authentic to the series. I think it is like, I don't want to spoil too much about what I'm talking about in next Tuesday's video, because I do think Imu can work really, really well still as a final villain. I really think he can. But we've seen villains like Imu before, different flavors of them, right? Blackbeard truly feels like a type of villain that I can't think of a clear analog to in other manga, anime, fiction, fantasy stories. He just is such a beautifully unique character. I think that there's a lot missing for Blackbeard at the moment. He does not have that same sense of threat. He does not have that type of aura. In fact, Blackbeard is meant to be a character that feels like he's aura-less in a sense. Like, his introduction is him just sitting by Luffy in a bar, arguing with him about stupid shit, and then yelling in the streets, like, about random bullshit, He's supposed to feel like, like a bum or whatever, right? And his story starts off with him essentially as a bum. And he's treated like like other characters don't respect him. They view him as a coward. They view him as spineless, pathetic, etc., right? But he keeps climbing. He's a planner, right? But he's not like an Eisen-type planner, where everything goes exactly as he concocts. It's kind of the opposite, where he makes his plans, they're messy, they often go bad, but he wiggles his way up, and he hits more than he misses, the chips fall on his side just enough more frequently than they don't, It's just a very fascinating character in terms of potential. He's still missing a lot of things that would make him a fitting final villain, but you can always see the potential. Like Blackbeard, I suppose, you could say Blackbeard is he's the potential man of One Piece, but unlike in Jujutsu Kaisen, we love him for it, Ajay, thanks for the 2. A+ chapter, but if Imu doesn't catch a body, #I'm out. I don't think Imu needs to kill anybody. If he does, it'll probably be some like old dude like Jarl or Gaban or some shit, But I don't think Imu needs to kill somebody. I think it's okay if that doesn't happen. But he needs to feel like a threat. Again, like, there's so many things that you can do in One Piece to really make a character feel like a serious threat and feel like he really fucked up and scarred the heroes without having to kill anybody, Like, again, Sabaody is the most traumatic experience the Straw Hats ever went through. Nobody died, Empty Mind, thanks for the 2. Guessing Imu has a very clean design, normal form. I don't know. Some people think that okay, do we think that Imu is a Lunarian? Do we think Imu is a Lunarian? People are leaning towards this being a loss for the Straw Hats, which is interesting. I think it's going to be like they can't beat Imu, but they get away with it at the end of the day, And I don't know if they'll even have to escape Elbaf or anything. I don't know. Is Imu a Lunarian? Yes, no, that appearance is from his zone. Okay. In case you forgot what Imu's design looks like, let me just give you all a refresher. So, we've got these fantastic new posters of all the gods. We've got the God Trio. We've got Imu, Saint Imu Narona. We've got Nidhogg. We've got Nika. And the best part is we've got a huge sale for all of them. Buy 2, get 3. So we've got all your favorite One Piece characters here, all your favorite villains. We've got Shamrock. We've got everybody. Yeah, and you can buy. So the God Trio are this month only, so make sure you get them. I've got the link pinned in the chat. But you can get any posters, and it doesn't just have to be character posters. If you also want island posters, it's mix and match. You can get one island poster, one emu poster, hell, like 3 ships posters if you want. You can mix and match it however you want. You can get 2 ships, 2 islands, 1 character. Basically, it's 5 for the price of 2. So any 5 posters from the entire collection for the price of 2. But the God posters are new, and they are this month only. So if you want to be the first person to get your hands on an emu poster in his Zoan form for your walls, make sure to get that right now. Teptio, thanks for the 2. Garling's problem was that his 2 fights versus Rocks were off-screen, like how killing him was off-screen, which seems to be a problem Oda has with fights. It's a problem Oda has with fights that he deems, like, basically unimportant or, like, skirmishes, you know? When Oda wants to tell a full story with a fight, that's when he sits down and really writes it. But otherwise, it's just like, okay, all that needs to happen is Rocks defeats Garling. Do I need to show Rocks defeating Garling? I think sometimes Oda also uses the logic of, like, well, I only have time to show, like, one really cool thing. So let me cut off the things that aren't, like, let me do it in priority, right? So, like, in the whole God Valley flashback, the big event, the one that we were told about in advance, was Roger and Garp versus Rocks. So Oda made to show that in as much detail as he could, given the time that he had allotted for himself for the God Valley flashback, right? So that was the fight that he spent the most time on. Then beyond that, it was like, okay, well, what else? Well, I want to show the old legends fighting Emu a bit. So we got about a chapter-ish of that, if you want to call it that, with a lot of dialogue in between. And then you kind of just keep going down. Oda's like, well, I want to show a cool panel of, like, Garp attacking the Yonko. Okay, like, and then that's just like a quick little scene, quick little exchange, and just kind of the level of priorities, I guess, for Oda of, like, what's cool enough to show keeps going down. And finally you reached, like, Rocks versus Garling, which Oda was just like, fuck it. Rocks fucks up Garling. That's all you need to know. Teptio Treviso, thanks for the 5. Oh, no, we covered this. Sorry. Factory Cow, thanks for the 5. How does Emu's design preclude him from being Lunarian? Luffy keeps his features with his clouds. Remember what Marco said about them atop the red line. I'm not saying that it doesn't mean he can be, what do you call it? I'm not saying that it does or doesn't mean that he's Lunarian. Yeah, Luffy keeps a lot of his features with his clouds, but that varies from Zoan to Zoan. I mean, like, Kaido looks pretty fucking different in his mythical Zoan hybrid form, you know? Sengoku looks pretty fucking different in his form, you know? You go down the list, like, Lucci doesn't normally look like a fucking leopard. Kaku, yeah, he's got a square nose, but he doesn't look like a giraffe, you know? Generally, the Zoan transformation does like, you still see the same facial features, but yeah, things like skin changing, hair turning white, stuff like that, that could easily be a Zoan transformation. I'm not saying it is or isn't, that he is or isn't a Lunarian, but it's actually precisely because what Marco said about them atop the red line that I'm inclined to think that he might not be a Lunarian, because the Lunarians were their own race that reigned as gods, right? Saint Emu Narona, it's hard to say, like, was he, like, he was one of the original 20 kings, so was he the king of the Lunarians that then, like, decided that, oh, I don't like the ancient kingdom, let me get other kings together to attack the ancient kingdom? That's possible. Was he, like, a Lunarian that ended up on the Blue Seas and became king of a separate kingdom? You see what I'm saying? Like, just because we have some context about this character, Saint Emu Narona, and he's one of the 20 kings, that's why it calls into question that, you know, would he have been a Lunarian in the first place? I don't know. I have my own little pet theory. Like, I was going to save it. You can read about it, or you can watch it in the chapter review, but I guess I'll just share it here, okay? So, it also plays into what Teptio Treviso said. Thanks for the 2, man. You think Emu is a Lunarian ancient giant hybrid. So, I think it's interesting. So, like, we saw that the size changed when Emu went into his Zoan form, right? And we saw that he gained Lunarian features, right? So let's play this little thought experiment, okay? And this is what I talk about in my chapter review, but I'll just talk about it here. I like saving some things for chapter review, some things for here. But anyway, let's pretend that how do we know that devil fruits work? Or what do we know about how devil fruits work? Devil fruits work not based on like real life, okay? Devil fruits work very simply based on people's imaginations. Whatever people imagine a concept to be, a devil fruit will form of that. Okay? So, if you imagine, like, the reason that Luffy looks like he does in Nika form is because, as was explained in Elbaf, in general, all cultures envision Nika as this laughing, smiling warrior with white hair and white robes, right? That's why the devil fruit, the Nika fruit that formed, makes Luffy look like that, okay? It's the version of Nika that people imagine, okay? Now, let's imagine that a devil fruit was created, right? This devil would essentially be what people imagine the devil to look like, right? You all are following me with that. Okay, so let's rewind. In the past, what do we know? We know a couple things. We know that the Lunarians apparently ruled as gods on top of the red line. This was back in the ancient past, right? Lunarians ruled as gods on top of the red line. This suggests that the Lunarians may have really oppressed the people below them. Because in One Piece, almost every time you've got gods ruling over people, the gods treat them like absolute shit and really oppress and make life a living hell for them, right? So, while the Lunarians would have declared themselves as gods, I think it'd be more likely that mankind would have had a very healthy fear of them and may have viewed them as like basically these demonic overlords that rule over them, okay? Now, combine this with what's the other race that people probably really feared back in the day? Ancient giants. Like, literally, it's told to us over and over and over again in the story that giants nowadays are more peaceful, but in the past, especially ancient giants, that was like the terror of mankind. Like, ancient giants were like a notoriously violent, destructive race, right? Probably back when there were a lot more of them, they must have just been a terror, like the absolute scourge of the seas, right? Like going around destroying whatever they wanted, right? So, putting those ideas together, think about this. If devil fruits are formed from what mankind imagines, right? If you existed during that era, let's say the Second World, and mankind is imagining the concept of the devil, right? Well, the devil takes shape in your mind based on just the like, everybody doesn't automatically have the same concept of the devil, right? It would only be the case if the collective unconscious seemed to suggest that basically, what is it that we fear the most, right? Like the idea of what a devil would be like, right? It's the combination of like the demonic Lunarian race that are the gods that oppress us, right? And ancient giants, the scariest race that like terrorizes the sea, right? Like if you're just concocting a really scary vision of the devil in your head, in a world like that, it would probably, like the devil that you come up with would probably look like that, right? That's what I'm trying to get at here, which is that the Zoan form that we're getting just represents, assuming it is the devil Zoan, right? It would represent what people imagine the devil to be like. And in the Second World, I would not be surprised considering the Lunarians are potentially oppressing everybody and ancient giants are terrorizing the sea, that the scariest monster, the scariest vision that people would imagine of like the embodiment of evil would be like this hybrid sort of vision of like a devil that's like this Lunarian-esque appearance and like ancient giant size and horns and stuff like that. Does that make sense? So that's part of why I'm a little hesitant to, to assume that Emu is Lunarian right away. And I think that it is a solid possibility that what we're getting here, a form that appears to be a combination of a Lunarian and an ancient giant, It might just be the representation of people's fears from that era, and that is ultimately the vision that takes shape into a devil fruit. Does that follow? But why do only humans' fears count? Do the other races not have their own ideas of fears and imagination? I mean, it could. We don't know the details of how devil fruits work, but it could just be based on majority rule. The whole Lunarian thing is coming solely from his darker skin tone. This shit is so ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, he might not even be a Lunarian, but he's got the white hair also, is what it looks like. Tiptio Treviso, thanks for the 5. Garling's problem... Oh, no, we covered this. Sorry, I keep seeing this comment again in the feed. Lars Mango, thanks for the 7. Hey, Morge, I've been working on my own anime-manga clothing brand, and I'm just wondering how y'all avoid/approach copyright from Shueisha or whoever. There's not really... So, like, we're not new. There's, like, if you go to an anime convention, there's, like, a million different long-running artists, dealers, websites, etc. that do this, that do fan art. And generally, the rule is basically there isn't anything that needs to be done. If Shueisha wants to crack down, it ultimately cracks down or something like that. But there's not anything that... There's no rule specifically. All of our stuff is... on our site, it's One Piece inspired. But there's not really a rule. You just... The fan-made anime manga industry is, like, absolutely huge, to the point that, like, you can go to Amazon and order stuff that's made by fans and stuff like that. So there's not really anything specific. It's just, there's a very large industry that already exists. Empty Mind, thanks for the 2. Oda should have made Garling defeat a Rocks member. Yeah, I think that would have been good. Make him defeat a Rocks member and then have him lose. Kosh Bandit, thanks for the 2. Please tell TCP to not put Emu in the ads for this chapter. That is not... Here, I can send a message. That's not my call. I mean, I can send a message in our chat. Because I'm not the one who creates the ads for the site or anything like that. I can ask. Here, let me send a message. Hold on, I just sent a message. We'll see. I don't think you can actually see Emu in that, personally. If you're zooming in, I think it's impossible to tell that that's a character. But I did send a message. We'll see if we can get that removed, because it would be early. Anime Dimension, thanks for the 10. Part 1, recently while watching Fairy Tail, I noticed a scene where the final boss, Acnologia, attacks the main crew and completely overwhelms them. Just as they're about to be obliterated, someone saves them by putting up a barrier. I feel something similar could happen here. Maybe someone connected to Joy Boy or someone else will intervene and save everyone or push Emu away. I mean, it's very similar to what happened at the end of Egghead. I do think that something like that could happen. As long as it feels like Emu got to show off everything he could do, I think that that'll feel satisfying. That was my one complaint with the Gorosei, which is like, I'm okay with them being saved by the Haki Knot, but I think that if you're going to set up a scenario where the Strats need to be saved, then create a sense of like despair and hopelessness first, so that the Gorosei feel like threats that they need to be saved from. It was kind of a lot of just like them brushing off the Gorosei threat until the final chapter where suddenly all of the Gorosei managed to assemble, minus Mars because he's back home, but all the remaining Gorosei managed to assemble, and then for like a brief moment, they're all attacking in unison, and it's like, oh shit, what are the Strahds going to do? So there's a brief moment where it looks like now they might be in trouble, and then the Haki Knot sends them away. I think it would be so much more effective if it's just like, just make them feel overwhelmed first, like at Saboti, and then have them saved by a Haki Knot or something. That's my opinion. Just my opinion. Rashab, thanks for the 2. A God's Knights versus an Admiral, no Conqueror's Haki, who wins? I mean, Admirals, as far as we know, don't have Conqueror's Haki. And I think an Admiral would definitely win. As long as you accept, like, being broken into pieces, like, killing them as a win condition, you know? If it's, like, to the death, then maybe that heart would be the answer, but we don't know enough details about the heart. But if it's to the death, then technically, I guess a God's Knight, or it would be a draw or something, but just in terms of like a standard win, the Admiral would win without too much trouble at all. Yeah. Maybe if it's like someone like Shamrock, that's all, I don't know. Nixie81888, thanks for the 5. Morge, Mihawk fanboys must be stopped. My friend said that Emu didn't have a black blade, so this is a Mihawk upscale, and I can't tell if he's kidding, shake my head. That's gotta be joking, because otherwise, if he's not joking, then I think you might have to direct your friend to the closest mental institution. And there'll likely be some pushback, but I think if you just explain to the attendees or the people at the front desk, like, look, I know my friend might seem like he's normal on the surface, but earlier today, he just told me that Emu not having a black blade is Mihawk upscale. And then whatever hospital you're at would understand right away. They'd pull out the stretchers, the straitjacket, find the biggest, softest padded cell, and he'd be in there for quite some time. I think this kills the Black Blade agenda. I'm no joke. I think this kills the Black Blade agenda. Like, at this point, there's no way. You can't still hold on to the Black Blade agenda at this point, right? Like, it's done. It's done. I feel like if you have a Black Blade, it probably just means that you really like your sword. I think that's just all it is. I think it just means you really like your sword. Like, that doesn't even, like... Mihawk can still be stronger than Shanks, that's fine, you know? But it doesn't mean that Mihawk having a black blade puts him above every single character ever who doesn't have a black blade, you know? I think the Black Blade agenda is just done, you know? I think it just means you like your sword a lot. I feel like it might actually be a point of embarrassment more than anything. I feel like you might actually almost want to be like ashamed walking around with a black blade because it's like, oh shit, that guy's sword is permanently black? Ugh. Is he like... it's just always black? It's like, that's a little obsessive. Is he always just like, just always putting his Haki into his, like, what's he doing over there? I just feel like it's a point of obsession. Like, you're just so obsessed with your sword, and you're just so in tune with the sword, that it just turns permanently black. I feel like it actually might be a point of weirdness in the One Piece world. And Mihawk's just so strong that nobody calls him out on it. But it's like, dude, he's so obsessed with Yoru that, like, Yoru literally, it's black now. Like, permanently. Like, what? Yeah, it's just, he doesn't stop. It's just always black. Like, bro, that's a little weird. That's just my take. Continuing on. Wait up! Thanks a lot. Emu's stuck on red line because he has beef with the Earth God, like Devil Fruit users drown. Emu has a pact with the Red Serpent to live on. Like Zunisha, Emu will die freeing the Red Snake. Ragnarok. Oh, that's like a really interesting idea. That's a really interesting idea. I wouldn't have thought that, like, Emu loses first and then, like, Red Snake released and then, I guess, we transition to Blackbeard. That's a very interesting idea, it being conditional. Taptir Treviso, thanks for the 2. So are you still on Emu as a human with the design? No, I'm just split right now. Need to wait and see. I'm just not jumping to the Lunarian thing because it seems like he's in a hybrid form, right? So if he's in a hybrid form, it's too difficult to tell right now how much of this is his hybrid, like is his Zoan, versus how much of it is just Imu himself, you know? 1 second. I think it's entirely possible that Imu is a Lunarian. I'm not against that idea. I'm just exercising caution, I suppose. Let's get the stream lights up to 350 real quick. 1 second. Deptio, thanks for the 2. If it's all a fruit, will Blackbeard transform into Lunarian? Maybe. I mean, again, we don't know if it's like, does it just look like Lunarian? We don't know. But will Blackbeard transform into what that looks like? I think so. Sid, thanks for the 2. Or Sid P, thanks for the 2. So the raid will fail is back. Ha 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 ha. I'm not on the train of the Straw Hats are losing here. I'm on the train of wait and see. I think it's genuinely up in the air. I don't know if Oda would have the heroes just have a straight loss here. I feel like we could be set up for a valiant effort to fight back against Imu, and then some shenanigans with either Imu's maybe a time limit thing like people have talked about, or people messing with the pentagrams, or like aid coming in the form of Shanks or something. I think whatever happens, I don't think it'd be like a clean win for the Straw Hats. I think it might be more like we survived sort of thing. It's hard to say. Sid P, thanks for the 5. Morge, how has life been in hiding for the past 4 years since the theory failed? JK set this in response to your old tweet from the... I don't know how to respond to this. From Dan, thanks for the 10. This chapter actually made me interested in Imu's character. He's a man haunted by the failures / ghosts of his past. I'd love for you to make an Imu analysis soon. This chapter have way more nuance. I think for him to have a true for me to truly do an analysis on him, I need more material to work with. But next Tuesday's video is a bit of a deep dive into Imu's potential as a villain based on the things that we've gotten out of him so far. King 6681, thanks for the 2. Mihawk is Imu's son. All Imu hype is Mihawk hype. I think that theory is technically in some way still alive. Henchme, thanks for the 2. What does Mihawk do with his big black blade? Yeah, I don't know. I think he polishes it day in, day out. Jacob says no raid will fail energy. Damn. I think people don't understand. The raid will fail was based on the simple premise of a narrative arc. That's all. The arc had no low point. The arc had no low point. My argument was simply the arc needs a low point for basic drama. It didn't have a low point, so then that transitioned into, okay, if there's not going to be a low point, then maybe the raid itself will be the low point. And then as the arc progressed further, it's like, okay, the raid has to be the low point. Otherwise, we just read an arc with zero tension or pushback whatsoever from beginning to end. And I was like, there's no way Oda would do that. The difference with Elbaf is that we've already kind of had that sort of low point. It was pretty clear in the middle of the arc. Everybody gets fucked up. Elbaf is in shambles. Seems like the situation's gotten really bad. And then after that, the climax began. So now we are still in the climax, right? So this whole section, ever since the monster tree and Loki came back up and started fighting back, has been the climax, the finale of the arc. This is kind of like the final boss of the climax, right? So from here, we're still in the flow of normal narrative structure. Now we will find out, okay, what does Oda want the outcome of this battle to be? Like, what does he want the outcome of this battle to be? The raid will fail still assumed that Wano is going to end in victory for the Straw Hats in the end. It was just that we need a low point in the middle. So the argument was that the raid might be the middle of the arc rather than the end of the arc, right? Elbaf is not the same. In that Elbaf, I don't know if this arc is supposed to end in victory or defeat. Everybody knew from the get-go that Wano is an arc that's supposed to end in victory. It's just a question of, is the raid that end, or is it the low point that then leads to victory? But everybody knew from the beginning Wano is going to end with the Straw Hats winning. Elbaf is a totally different scenario because we really don't know, is it supposed to end with the Straw Hats winning or not? We have no sort of prior expectations. We didn't know that Imu's coming to this arc. We didn't know what the conflict's going to be about. We don't know what comes next after Elbaf, really. We don't know what the potential consequences are. Wano was pretty cut and dry as a story in terms of like what to expect from the start, which is like we're coming here to free the land and defeat Kaido, and Luffy will probably be a Yonko in the end. The only question was like how will everything play out in the like on the way. And by the end of the arc, the key points of Wano is freed, Kaido's defeated, Luffy's a Yonko, all of those were checked off, you know? Elbaf, we don't know what needs to be checked off. We have no idea what the end checklist for this arc is supposed to look like. Luffy lost to Kaido in Act 1. That is the low point of the arc. Read what you just said again. That's the beginning of the arc, right? So how's that narrative structure? That's like, literally, you could argue the prologue of the arc. Low point's in the middle. It's also called the midpoint for that very reason. Low point, loss in the beginning kind of just gets the ball rolling. That's like saying, like, Luffy losing to Aokiji at the start of Water 7 is the low point of the arc, you know? I think the simplest way to demonstrate that Wano doesn't have a low point is if I say like Wano doesn't have a low point, or ask like what's the low point, if I read chat, you'll see like 4 different answers. Like somebody will be like, well, Luffy lost to Kaido in Act 1, so that was the low point. Or like the Kanjuro betrayal is the low point or something. The simple fact that you can't easily point to, well, this is the moment that everything went south for the protagonists, that in itself is proof that the arc had no midpoint or low point. Hence, while the entire time I was talking about like, okay, well, we've had no low point so far, no clear definitive moment where the tone, everything just shifts, things get shitty for our protagonists across the board, therefore, it's got to be the raid, otherwise this is just an arc with no low point, meaning this was an arc with no drama, which I did not believe at the time Oda would do, right? Now I've learned, now I know that Oda is willing to do that, right? With Elbaf, it's very simple and straightforward. If I'm like, well, what's the low point of the arc? It's like, well, when the fucking Straughts all got captured and then Elbaf got run over by all the MMAs and monsters, right? It's pretty cut and dry. You know the exact section of the arc. It's literally the 1140s. That's the section. It's pretty straightforward. I can do the same thing for pretty much every single arc. I could ask you guys for pretty much every single major arc, hey, what was the time that things were really bad, you know? If I asked you in Whole Cake, when did things get really bad? You'd be like, probably when Luffy and Nami got captured after having their big falling out with Sanji, and Sanji was like crying and stuff like that because of the pudding situation. Clear low point section. You can point to the basic 10 chapter stretch where it's like, yeah, this is when everybody was at their lowest, and then the arc after that was them trying to climb out of the hole. I don't need to get into Wano stuff too much here. We'll save that for the video. But I just find it really funny that it's like, I say Wano doesn't have a low point. And then somebody might be like, no, it did. It had this low point. But then somebody else is pointing to a totally different thing. And somebody else is pointing to a totally different thing. And nobody has the same answer, which means that there actually isn't a clear answer because there was no low point. Scuba, thanks for the 5. The eyes on Emus Clouds, do you think it could be a tease towards the King of the Rats mention of the first 20 kings, or just a dope visual effect? I'm leaning towards dope visual effect. I think it's just a cool twist on the Clouds thing. The Clouds were so cool early on with like Luffy in his Nika form, but then we kind of realized that everybody's got the Clouds. So then I think the Clouds kind of lost a bit of their luster. But this is a good spin on the Clouds for sure. Alex Tehor, thanks a lot. Idea for the vibe of the finale. It's basically channeling Usopp's spirit. We go through the ringer and we will stand. We can't win, but don't lose. Oh, kind of like the end of Thriller Bark. That's a lot like the end of Thriller Bark with Kuma. A lot like Kuma. People pointed to several low points, Mord saying so there is no low point. I think you're misunderstanding the point about narrative structure, right? Narrative structure dictates there is a section of the storyline where things shift from good to bad, after which the heroes climb out, and then things shift from bad to good. It's very, very basic. It's just the essence of drama, right? So there's a difference between pointing out like, well, I think this was a bad thing, or I think this over here was a bad thing, etc. I'm asking, at what point in the narrative did everything shift from good to bad for the heroes to dig their way out of? If you can't answer that, then you're basically acknowledging that Wano had no narrative structure. Just saying that, well, there was a bad thing over here. Oh, and then there was a bad thing over here. This was a bad thing, right? So there's a low point. It's like, okay, so where's the structure? What sort of story flow does that entail, right? None. It's just like you're trying to grasp to make like something fit because you know that ultimately it did not have a structure. Taptio Treviso, thanks for the 2. Said that like 140 chapters in, though. Way too late. Like 140 chapters in, though. Said what 140 chapters in? Wait, what was said 140 chapters in? I think I might be missing something. Basim El Madawi, thanks for the 5. Really good chapter. Gonna add that panel of Emu to my Gear 5 Luffy tattoo. I like the idea of Emu having a Muzan-like weak spot caused by Joy Boy. Oh, that would be interesting. That would be interesting. Gonna add that panel of Emu to my Gear 5 Luffy tattoo. I'm processing something here. Okay. I think I'm trying to mentally reconcile how you're going to add a panel of Luffy to a Gear 5 Luffy tattoo, but I guess you're going to mesh those two things together. That is really cool to have both of them side by side. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. The boat's getting destroyed, Momo being kidnapped, and the Akazaya going alone to the raid after doing all that work to gather forces was the low point. It's actually really funny you say that, because none of that affected the Alliance in the slightest. It just made the Scabbards sad. It just made the Scabbards cry. Everybody else was literally having the time of their lives during that point. The Strats are showing up, talking about how we're pirates, literally party planning during this section you're talking about. They are literally celebrating Jinbei showing up, and they're planning the party of what they're going to do once they defeat Kaido. Literally. The section you're talking about is just sad for the Scabbards. And newsflash, the Scabbards were crying about the same shit since fucking Zoe. They'd been nonstop crying about how sad their past was and how upset they were. So I guess if you want to argue that, look, there was a low point in the sense that I can find a section where this small set of characters was sad because people showed up 5 minutes late to the raid. If that, like, you could argue that that's Wano's low point, but then if that's the case, then you're basically straight up saying that the arc had the most brief, fleeting, and inconsequential drama imaginable for a 150 chapter epic. So when I'm reading Wano, it wasn't like I was reading and I was like, well, nothing sad ever happens. It was just like, this is such a huge arc. It would be crazy if Oda's notion of like something actually dramatic happening in the story was the Scabbards crying for the 15th time because people like got the wrong directions and showed up like 5 minutes late to the raid, and everybody else is still good and in good spirits, right? It's just the Scabbards, right? So I was like, if that's Oda's big dramatic hammer that he's dropping on the arc, I was like, well, then this would just be a really, really bad arc, right? Like this would just be, you can't even remotely compare it to something like Water 7 Enies Lobby or like Alabasta or even just one arc back in Whole Cake Island. I was like, there's no way that an arc so big and so important and with so much gravitas and weight around it would just have such a weak attempt at drama. So I was like hoping, right? I was just hoping that the arc would be able to give us some sort of actual dramatic juice, which is why I held out hope for the raid. Because in my mind, it was like, well, if this is it, then we're kind of just reading a bad story, right? Because it's like, I don't think anybody sits here and is just like, oh my god, you know, one of the darkest and hardest hitting moments in One Piece was when the Scabbards were crying for the 50th time because the rest of the Alliance showed up a few minutes late to the raid. I don't think anybody sits here and thinks that. Like, I'm just going to say that straight up. So in my mind, it was just like, I still believe that Wano would be a good arc. If you really want to argue that that is like the midpoint of the arc, then it just segues into a different argument, which is just like, okay, well then that unfortunately means that the arc kind of sucks, right? Pin Parak, thanks for the 2. Imu's design is kind of giving Gear death. I mean, like, you have, just because One Piece has goofy designs doesn't mean that all villain designs are silly. Like, we've been through this, right? Like, Kaido's design is pretty badass. Like, does that Gear death, you know? The Gorosei were badass. Is that Gear death? Kids Mini 94, thanks for the 20. I'll be annoyed if Luffy thinks the current situation is funny. Closest to Wano low point was Luffy getting dropped into the sea and Kaido went back downstairs. If Kinemon's death stuck, it would have been a true low point. I think there were opportunities. I think all that, like, it's very simple. All that has to happen is that the hero's morale has to be affected. That's it. And that happens in pretty much every great One Piece arc. Oda didn't want to do it for Wano, the biggest and most important arc in the story up to that point. It is what it is, but, like, you know, we can only hope for better going forward. I don't think, if Luffy thinks this current situation is funny, I was encouraged by Luffy already getting kind of serious about how the Usopp situation was. So I do have high hopes for Luffy here. But a lot's going to depend on what Imu actually does, right? So, like, if Imu isn't that effective as a threat, then you'll probably see, like, a ha-ha he Luffy. If Imu is effective as a threat, you might see him a bit more serious. And then, in the moments when we've seen flashes of, like, genuine passion and, like, emotional affect in Luffy, like, that's not just, like, laughing things off. It's been when a character hurts someone that Luffy's trying to protect. So, be it a crewmate, or as we saw with Vegapunk, like, Luffy got mad at Saturn and Kizaru. The potential is definitely there. Okay, time out. So this is one more comment on Wano, right? Jay Sleaze says, you're downplaying the tension during Wano. Kaido was so much stronger than Luffy and beat him so completely that for most of the arc, nobody thought Luffy would actually win. So this in a nutshell sums up the issue with Wano, which is that what you just said is completely false. It's actually, like, that is the issue with Wano, in that from start to finish in that arc, it was like at every single opportunity, Oda seemed to establish that nobody at any point was worried about Kaido. Nobody was at any point questioning that they might win. Like, literally, there is the opening chapter of the battle is titled, I can't even imagine losing. I can't even imagine losing. That's what the opening chapter is. And that's what characters are literally talking about throughout the raid. Like, Hyogoro is like, I don't think we can even lose. Like, I think the deck is stacked in our favor. Like, I think we got this in the bag. That's what he says at the start of the raid. And characters reiterate this sentiment over and over again. Like, over and over and over again. Like, even when Kaido beats Luffy and knocks him off the roof, he's like, he himself says, this doesn't matter because they're still just all going to think you're going to win. And that's literally exactly what happens. Kaido literally verbally tells the reader that what happened right here, the loss means nothing because it's not going to change the tone, right? So that's the issue. If characters had a sense of, like, desperation throughout the raid, or a sense of pressure, like you see in other storylines, like in Alabasta, like in Enies Lobby, etc., it's fine to believe in Luffy, but it's never been the case before where it's just like all the characters are thinking of it as a given that they're going to win. Once you have characters basically talking about it as though it's a given that they're going to win, like it's easy, like there's no problem, no reason to worry, etc., you fundamentally don't have tension. And that's just the simple definition of tension in storytelling. That's not a debatable thing. That is what the definition of tension in storytelling is. So when you have the characters unanimously all talking about how everything is going fine, how they don't feel worried, how they know, not even believe, how they just know that they're going to win, and to top it all off, before the battle even begins, they are planning the party that they're going to have once they celebrate the win. It's just, what are we even doing here? Like, I cannot imagine the Straw's planning a party on the way to saving Robin from Eni's lobby. Like, they're thinking, how are we going to fucking survive? You know? It's not remotely close to any other One Piece arc. Like, I can't even imagine Fairy Tail going to those sort of lengths of trying to defuse tension. So, when you're saying during the arc nobody thought Luffy could actually win, it's the exact opposite. And that's precisely my argument, which is that there was no tension because the characters firmly told us explicitly, verbally, without any sort of room for interpretation, that they do not feel tension. They do not feel tension during this raid. They know they've got this in the bag. An author's job, even if we, the reader, know that ultimately the heroes are supposed to win, is to try to give us the illusion that the characters are in some level of trouble. And the first and simplest step of that is just making the characters themselves feel like they're in some degree of trouble. When Oda is actively going out of his way to have the characters state that we do not feel this way, you don't even have the makings of tension. You can't even get the ball rolling to try and start creating a sort of tone or atmosphere of desperation. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. You could say that when the entire alliance thought Luffy died for real this time before he realized Gear 5, maybe I'm an Oda's angel, but I don't care, loved Wano personally. So I love that chapter. And that chapter I love because it's the chapter that proves my point. Because so many people are trying to point like, well, this was a low point, this was a low point, this was a low point, right? There actually was one chapter in Wano where you can see what I'm talking about. That was chapter 1043. That's the one chapter in Wano, the only chapter in a 150 chapter arc. That's the one chapter where suddenly everyone's losing their shit. It's the only moment in the arc where everybody's like, oh my god, this is bad. So I love that chapter because it illustrates what I'm talking about. Because you might be feeling like, Morge, what are you talking about? Like, what is this hypothetical like moment of tension that you want? It actually already exists. I love that chapter because it proves what is missing for the entire rest of the raid. That's the only chapter in the raid that people are actually like, wait a second, guys. Even though we've been patting ourselves on the back for like a job well done for the last 50 chapters and talking about how easy it is for the last 50 chapters, for the first time, I think we might not actually win this raid. I love that chapter because it is the encapsulation of what I am saying is not there for the rest of the raid. Does that make sense? Like, that chapter alone proves my point in that they were not acting like this beforehand. That chapter is evidence of the missing piece in Wano that I'm talking about. Now, it's great that that chapter happened, right? But that's not a dramatic, like, midpoint. That's, like, literally at the end of the final battle. You should hope that at the end of a final battle, there is at least one moment where everybody's, like, worried, right? What you want for a dramatic storyline is for that sort of energy to also come earlier in the story to generate drama from the midpoint onwards, right? Every final battle in any story is always going to have, like, a moment for drama towards the end where people are like actually clutching their pearls and like things are getting really tense, right? But for the story as a whole to have like a dramatic midpoint, you want like a set of chapters like that. You want the middle section of the story to have that same sort of feeling, right? So I'm happy you brought up chapter 1043 because it's just like, cool, 1043, great. That's it. Put that shit in the middle of the storyline. Like the same way the fucking when Lucci and the CP9 fucked up Luffy and the Straw Hats in the middle of the Water 7 Eni's Lobby storyline, right? Go read that section of chapters. Everything went to shit. All the Straw Hats are depressed. Everybody feels hopeless. Everybody feels broken. Everybody's down in the dumps. That's what makes it so dramatic when everyone rises back up. Because rising back up is only dramatic when you've fallen down in the first place. If everybody's cool and feeling good for pretty much all of Act 2 and Act 3, right? Even Act 1, when Luffy lost to Kaido, is like, that's potential for something, but literally nobody gave a shit. It was like, like literally everybody's like, we don't care, Luffy's gonna be okay, and Luffy treats Udon like a vacation, right? Just take the feeling from chapter 1043, insert it for a little bit of a stretch of time anywhere earlier in the arc, right? Just 4 or 5 chapters, and you've got a midpoint. That's all. Like, it's not really complicated what I'm asking for. Like, Oda does it phenomenally in most arcs. Extended moments since people want to be pedantic. Yeah, like, that's like the bare minimum that you should hope during the final battle there's a moment of tension. Because if you want to use that as the example, like, in the final battle against Lucci or against Crocodile or against Doflamingo or fucking Arlong, you've got tons of chapters like that. Like 1043 was one chapter in the final battle that had that, right? Still good, but not comparable to other final battles. Now, the bigger picture is that you need that in more than just the very, very end of the story if you want the whole story to have drama. You need that earlier in the story as well. That's what's missing. West Blue, thanks for the 2. Emu and Robin share the same nose. I don't know, connections potentially there. Tiptia Treviso, thanks for the 2. This should be the motivation for the Wano analysis. You got me worked up, and now I actually feel like I haven't been worked up about Wano in a long time. I think the thing that got me worked up is just like, we're talking about Elbaf, and it's just like, yeah, this stuff is great. This is like what Oda could have been doing in the past, but he just didn't want to, I think when I see how great of a writer Oda is in these moments, it's just like, and then I bring up like, yeah, this is the sort of thing that was missing in a certain previous storyline, which you're right, I probably don't need to mention. I think I felt the need to mention it in the sense that like, because people are like, oh, is the raid going to fail here, etc. And that gets me thinking like, this is not a comparable situation to Wano because this arc has already had a narrative like low point, midpoint, right? And Wano is an arc that we knew from the beginning is going to end in victory, right? Elbaf is an arc where we really don't know what it's supposed to be at the end. Like, is it supposed to be... There's a spectrum. It could be a Saboti-esque... I'd say the spectrum ranges from this. Here's the spectrum, okay? So the spectrum of Elbaf endings are basically... You could have a Saboti-esque ending. That's the far end of the spectrum, which is complete rout of the Straw Hats, Elbaf Giants. Everybody's taught a major lesson. They all are in shambles, need to regroup, whatever. Some bad consequences, right? Saboti's on the one far end. Then one step over, I'd say you have Whole Cake Island, where everybody survives. They weather the storm. I would say you could view it as weathering the storm, but they leave with a sense of sort of melancholy in the air. That's how Whole Cake Island kind of ends, because there are some... Whole Cake Island at least tries to convince us that there's some losses, like, oh no, Jinbei's fate is up in the air, Germa's fate is up in the air, Pedro is dead, we're led to believe Pound is dead, right? Like, Whole Cake Island, they survive, they get away, they in fact get a win in a sense, but it's such a messy, muddy win that no one's really partying or anything at the end of it, right? So that's Whole Cake Island. Then you've got Egghead. Egghead is similar vibes to Whole Cake. They don't beat up the bad guys, but they get away. And Vegapunk's lost. Vegapunk dies, but he dies in a manner that everyone's still able to be in good spirits and stuff in the end. No one's really... Luffy's moping for a bit, but then it's listen, the Vegapunk thing, not a big deal, and everyone's cheering, right? So the vibes were still good in Egghead all the way up to the end, and then even as they're leaving the island, it's all right, it wasn't a clean victory. We had some losses, but it was, it's fine, right? So there's the Egghead arc. And then finally on the far, far end of the spectrum, you've got the standard One Piece arc, your Alabasta, your Enies Lobby, your Dressrosa, where they just kick the villain's ass, everything's happy and rosy at the end, everyone's partying, So I'd say that's the full spectrum. You got Saboti, a Saboti ending, Whole Cake ending, an Egghead ending, and then a standard ending, right? So that's the full spectrum. It's genuinely impossible to say where Elbaf is supposed to end up, because it's not the end of the saga, so there's still more to go. We don't even know what Imu's positioning is supposed to be in context of who is the final villain, so we don't know what is supposed to happen here with him exactly. We don't even know the next step for the heroes exactly. We knew at the very least at the end of Whole Cake that the next step is we need to get back to the rest of the crew and go to Wano. We don't know what the fuck they're supposed to do after Elbaf. They don't know where the last road poneglyph is. Are they supposed to, acquire it somehow this arc? We don't know. Julian Reed, thanks for the 2. What chapter were they celebrating before the raid? What chapters were they not celebrating before the raid? I'm so fucking serious. Okay, how about look at everything starting from Luffy, Law, and Kid showing up to save the Scabbards. Okay, start with that. Then there's the party planning. If you want specifics, right, you can just read all their dialogue, all their tone. They're patting themselves on the back for having won the championship before stepping on the court. Okay, specifically their party planning when they're planning on doing the toast with Jinbei. They all like gather around this island to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna go kick their asses, no question. We're not concerned about this whatsoever. No one's feeling any stress. We're all nice and loose, you know, like it's just a warm-up game. And this is the party that we're like, let's fucking talk about the party that we're gonna throw. No other fucking One Piece arc are they talking about a party before the battle begins. Can you imagine the walk to Arlong Park with them like... Imagine the walk to Arlong Park with them just being like literally smiling, laughing, slapping each other on the back and being like, hey, what do you think we're gonna eat? What are we gonna drink after we save Nami's village? Totally different vibes, right? I don't know how much I can harp on this, but it's genuinely so jarringly different that I don't need to exaggerate whatsoever. They are party planning before the big final battle. I can't even get it in my head. I'm like, the final battle to save fucking Middle Earth. They're all fucking laughing and party planning beforehand. The final battle against the Empire, they're fucking party planning and stuff beforehand. Like, any situation, it just doesn't, it's so fucking bad, it's insane. It's like, there's no need for me to exaggerate, they are party planning. And then before the raid starts, there is a chapter, I don't even need to like look for it, there is a chapter that is called I Cannot Imagine Losing, in which characters are saying, we cannot imagine losing. This is not like I'm not making shit up. I'm not exaggerating. I don't need to. It's in the story. It's like the most like it's the most insane writing for a final battle of a gigantic storyline that's 150 chapters, but really like it's been building since Punk Hazard. So really like 300, 400 chapters, right? And that's like what it's concluding with. It's like you could not make it like less tense if you tried. I don't know what Oda could do to make it less tense. Like seriously, like can you guys think of examples? What would you come up with to try and make it less serious than that? Like what more can you do than having the characters saying, we literally can't imagine losing here? What more can you do than the characters party planning before the fight? I don't know. I think you would have to struggle. I think the challenge would be trying to find a way to make it even more of a joke than that. Isaiah Davis, thanks for the 2. The Louis Arnott warning was meant for Emu. That would be interesting. That would be interesting. I think the Louis Arnott was just like Oda coming up with stuff for us, though. I don't know. I think like Oda just needed to give us some spice towards the beginning. I don't know if there's actually anything really spooky about Elbaf in that sense. Fiery Hornet, thanks for the 5. The eyes on Emu's ring are probably inspired by biblically accurate angels from the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel? Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce Bible names. Seraphim having eyes on their wings and the rings. Yeah, if you look at biblically accurate angels, there's some scary shit. It's a lot of eye stuff. Like one's like a big giant eyeball with wings. One's like a wheel with eyes. It's really cool. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. Fair, but let me ask this. Was the battle at least enough of a struggle to justify them being upbeat in the tone about it? Did you like the fights? I think that there were a good number of fights where the Zoro fight, Sanji fight, part of the Robin fight, where there was sufficient struggle. I think one thing that Oda did that was really weird with the Law and Kid fight, and I was considering keeping this section in the Wano analysis. The Kaido fight is a joke, because all the time they're cutting back to the Kaido fight, it's Luffy laughing and giggling with Kaido. Like, literally, it's not like anything like any other fight in One Piece. Because in most fights in One Piece, you know, Luffy's actually feeling tension while he's fighting Lucci. Not while fighting Kaido, 90% of the fight is Luffy literally saying, I'm having fun. I cannot imagine Luffy saying, I'm having fun while, like, while fighting Lucci, or while fighting Doflamingo, like, while all of Dressrosa is about to die, right? So Kaido fight we set aside. There's one chapter in the Kaido fight, I think chapter 1042, where Luffy does actually get, like, feel some serious emotion in the Kaido fight. So one chapter out of, like, 25. But then obviously Gear 5th starts and that all goes away, right? So we set aside the Kaido fight. I think the Zoro fight was good for tension. I think Sanji fight was good for tension. I think Robin Black Maria was good. Law and Kid, it's bizarre. So if you go back and piece together all of the Law and Kid fight, what you notice is, I feel like I'm giving away lots of stuff from the Wano analysis here, but this was actually probably not making it to the Wano analysis because it's kind of trivial, so I guess I'll talk about it here. It's not big enough of a deal. But the Law and Kid fight, so it follows the structure where basically Law and Kid deal some damage to Big Mom, and then it's like, so they deal some damage to Big Mom gets up, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna get serious, okay? It cuts away. We cut back, and then off screen, it seems like Law and Kid got their ass beat by Big Mom, but this was off screen, okay? So then Big Mom thinks she's won, but then Law and Kid get up, and then they do something else, and they deal some more damage to Big Mom, okay? Then Big Mom gets up again, and she's like, okay, now I'm really getting serious. Cut away, cut back, off screen, Big Mom fucked them up some more. But yet again, Law and Kid get back up, and then they use their final moves, and then they defeat Big Mom, and then all's good, right? So the fight is essentially, it's really bizarre because it's sort of a back and forth where Law and Kid get their licks in, then Big Mom gets her licks in, then Law and Kid use a power-up, get their licks in some more, then Big Mom gets her licks in, then Kid and Law get another power-up, and then finally finish her off, right? So it's like a back and forth. But Oda does this weird thing where he skips every section where Big Mom is winning. Every single part of the fight where Big Mom turns things around and actually beats Kid and Law's ass for a bit, that's off-screened. So it's like this cycle of like, they beat her ass, we cut away, cut back, off-screen, it appears that they were losing off-screen, but then now that we cut back, they start beating her up again. We cut away, we cut back, it appears that off-screen she turned the tables, we don't get to see it, and now they just beat her up again and then finish her off and the fight's over. So it's the strangest thing because it's a fight that had a ton of potential to really make it feel very, very difficult for Kid and Law. But Oda strangely, like, it's a fight that feels like it has tension on paper, but when you're reading it all in one go, Oda seems to just skip all the parts where they are struggling. He just off-screens their struggles and cuts back to them getting back on their feet. And every time we're cutting to the fight, it's just to show Kid and Law fucking up Big Mom. Which is really bizarre because, like, one of the reasons that the Zoro and King fight has tension is because over the course of the fight, you stick with Zoro. And so over the course of the fight, Zoro is slowly being overwhelmed by King, and he's trying this and that and this and that, and nothing is working. And every single move in his book is failing. He's starting to spiral. He's like, if I can't do this, like, I don't know how to stop that. I don't know how to keep up with this. My sword is going haywire. It's just Zoro, like, stumbling and falling and so much. You see the beatdown that King is giving him. That's really where a lot of the tension comes from, right? Show, don't tell. Big Mom fight was entirely on Big Mom's end, and I think this is one of the reasons that Big Mom is often treated as not that strong or a bit of a joke. Oda just straight up off-screened all of the sections of the fight that she has the advantage and she's winning against Kid and Law. And he only cuts back to the fight to imply that they struggled, but then show them getting the upper hand yet again. So the Kid and Law fight versus Big Mom, it theoretically has tension in that we cut back and Kid and Law tell us that they had trouble while off screen, but every time the fight is shown on page, it's them beating her ass. The exception, I guess, is back when Basil Hawkins was doing his voodoo on Kid, but I kind of count the fight as officially starting after that section. So again, you don't got to take my word from it. Like, I'm just citing things exactly as they happen in the Wano arc. I don't need to exaggerate one iota of this. I suggest you go back and reread Kid and Law's fight. It does just follow this pattern of, like, everything we're shown is them just beating her ass. Everything we cut away from is her hypothetically beating them up, but never shown to us. We are only like, every section of the fight that we're actually shown is them just beating her up, which I understand a lot of people like the fight. I personally feel like the juicy part of the fight is the part where the struggle happens. Because to me, when you see the struggle, that's what makes the victory that much more meaningful. I think just being told about the struggle is not as effective. All right. Oda isn't really that good at drawing fights, in my opinion. No, because he did a good job with this with the other Straw Hats. Again, Zoro versus King, like, you have full chapters. Like, why is Zoro versus... Just think about this. Like, it's not anything revelatory I'm saying. Like, why is Zoro versus Mr. One held in such high regard as a fight? because we watched slowly as Zoro, this like invincible character up to this point, like just is hitting his head against a brick wall and is unable to even make a crack. And slowly he's just having to reckon with the reality that he is outmatched by Mr. One. And we're seeing it like slowly spiral as he's getting like fucked up more and more and more. And then slowly he's like taking serious damage and then like crazy amounts of damage. And then there's blood everywhere. Like we're watching Mr. One basically one up all of his like fatal attacks blow after blow. Like first he's like fucking driving a motor into Zoro's stomach, then Zoro's against the pillars and Mr. One's like slashing him and bringing all the pillars down, and Zoro's being crushed by rocks presumably. It's that slow escalating feel of just like how out of his depth Zoro is that makes that final turnaround when Zoro gets up and he awakens Haki and is able to finally cut Mr. One. That's what makes that so effective. If we just cut away from that whole section and skipped to Zoro getting up and saying, I have Haki now, and then like let's just say we skip that whole section, right? You start by seeing Zoro and Mr. One sparring or whatever, we cut away from the fight, we cut back, we see Zoro's all bloody and stuff, and Mr. One's walking away, so we can infer that Zoro lost, or was losing for a good section of the fight. Then Zoro gets up and just says, I have Haki now or whatever, and then cuts Mr. One down. Like, yeah, it would still be a hype fight, but the entire story of the fight is gone. But that's essentially what Oda did with Law and Kid, which is basically he skipped the struggle, right? He skipped the struggle of it. He implies the struggle occurred, but it ends with Law and Kid basically getting up and being like, well, I'm going to use my super move now, and then they defeat Big Mom. Does that make sense? But Julian Reed, to respond, I do think that some of the fights did have moments of tension. I think a lot of the fights counteracted this. So, for example, Frankie versus Sasaki, Jinbei versus Who's Who. If you want to count Chopper's storyline, the whole Ice Oni stuff was like a joke, right? Generally speaking, Luffy versus Kaido, the longest running fight of the entire Wano storyline, was very, very, very light and cavalier in comparison to most Luffy fights. Again, you can simply put it side by side with the previous arc's fight, Luffy versus Katakuri. Every single time we tuned into Luffy versus Katakuri, it was like Luffy was fighting with his life on the line, like his heart on the line. Like he was like Luffy was fighting like a madman with absolute desperation. You know, I'd say the one exception was that Mochi scene, but that was the scene that kind of broke the rule of what the rest of the fight was like. Whereas with Luffy versus Kaido, it's kind of the reverse. It's like the entire fight kind of had the casual tone of the Mochi scene, and then we had like maybe one chapter, 1042, where Luffy kind of gets serious, you know? Meek6173, thanks for the 5. Apologies for being so late. Hope you're not ending soon. Second favorite part of the chapter, since number 1 would be obvious. I think Garling's lines were pretty cool to me. I think getting some insight on Garling as a villain was enjoyable. Because he's slowly slipping back into, like, he's slowly coming back into the fore as, like, okay, even though he got humiliated by rocks, he's still, like, an enjoyable potential final arc villain. King 6681, thanks for the 5. Emu has a third eye on his forehead, and when he opens it, Zoro will open his scarred eye, turn into the real King of Hell, and split the sky with him. That would be peak 10 out of 10 writing. Okay, we've gone about a half hour longer than I would have liked to go, but the stream's been a lot of fun. Obviously, because this chapter's been pretty crazy. Even if we've gotten somewhat off topic and ended up in Wano of all places. This is so sad. When I'm so happy about One Piece, why does the conversation end up in Wano? I think I brought that upon myself. Anyway, I know that many of you wish that you could get the beautiful, beautiful artwork of Emu on your walls. So I'll give you a reminder. We do have Emu posters available right now, and we've got Nidhogg, and we've got Nika, so we've got the God Trio, and we've got a crazy stale going. So these posters are only available for April, but amongst all the posters in the store, so all character posters, island posters, ship posters, etc., we're doing a buy 2, get 3. Any 2 posters that you want, you get 3 free. So basically 5 posters for the price of 2. And of course, Emu, Nidhogg, and Nika are all included in that. So if you want to be getting your hands on the first emu artwork out there, then definitely head on over to the site. The comment is pinned in this chat. The link is pinned. All right, everybody. We are going to call it a day here. Thank you all very, very much for tuning in. And yeah, with that,